Oh, oh my gosh. Oh, where is that? Okay. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Shanghai20 at YouTube.com. I also simultaneously broadcast on Twitch. Ugh, I'm losing my voice, guys. It's not good. It's not good. We're not gonna be talking much tonight. I mean, I'll talk if I can, but I'm slowly but surely losing my voice, so I wanna try to give it a little bit of a break tonight. So what we're gonna do is this: we're gonna play some Dota, and then we're gonna be listening to some of my favorite SCP stories by the cool channel Exploring series. He does incredible readings of of SCP stories. Honestly, he's the reason that I got into SCPs and got into um Warhammer stuff. So the first one we're gonna listen to is Departmentalized. Um, if you're into SCP stories, you should definitely check his channel out. It's really good. Um, Disgraceful, bro. We gotta link up on some Marvel Rivals, man. You're doing really dope things with the fucking um with the support stuff, and I definitely could use a nice support player to help me. I don't even like where are you at? I wonder. He's probably like Grandmaster or something now. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna be saying much. I mean, if you guys want to talk or have questions, I'm definitely gonna try to answer them. Now that I think about it, I want to test this out for a second. Because I want to see if I can do like talk to text on my phone. Um, oh yeah, yeah, maybe I can.
I'll try and talk like this. I don't know if this will work, but I am going to try.
SCP 8190 Departmentalized. Corporate life is an unfortunate necessity for many people around the world, and while manual labor jobs have their own hefty share of downsides, the image of white collar work in the media has never been really glamorous. Films such as Office Space or shows like Severance aren't coy about showcasing the endless repetition and tedium involved with working for a massive corporation, often focusing on the average employee rather than the high power executives. For workers in many environments like these, it can sometimes be inscrutable as to how much they're really contributing to the organization and how much organization there is to speak of. SCP-8190 takes this idea to a bit of an extreme, as the Foundation is certainly a somewhat extreme organization, with countless departments, sub-departments, facilities, and employees. While obviously a certain percentage of the Foundation's employees have a decent grasp of what's going on, many are left with their own tasks in their own sub-department in their own department, with little clue of the big picture. I should mention that this is another intermission article for the Admonition series, so it gets a bit tricky. Let's take a look. The article begins with a notice from ETRA, the Emergent Threat Tactical Response Authority, stating that this document exists in its unmodified original state as part of an ongoing investigation, and if you'd like to request a copy, please complete Form SR01 and submit it to Site 19's Department of Notional Division.
I hope everyone had a good
The
day and a
containment
great
director
weekend.
for Site 19, Marissa Norwood, sends in a ticket about the ETRA message, as this is the first time in 20 years that she's ever had to manually submit an access request, let alone in hard copy. Normally, she'd assume L5 classification and forget about it, but there's no listed clearance level for 8190, and she sees no records of an ETRA investigation on her end. She's also pretty sure that she's never heard of a Department of Notional Divisions either. She's submitting the ticket as she's not sure if it's some sort of a bug or if she's just out of the loop, but she'd like a copy of the SR01 request sheet and the contact info for the current head of Notional Divisions. She guesses that it's some sort of recent internal restructuring, since the council has been doing a lot of that lately. We're then given only the classification info for 8190, with it having the containment type of Simulacra and the secondary class of Radix. In another ticket, Norwood says that she still hasn't received the SR01 document and still can't access 8190, although the classification info is seemingly visible to everyone. She wonders why ETRA would lock the contents of the file aside from the classification, and there isn't much to learn from them, with Simulacra not even being listed in the classifications guide. She also complains about the abysmal response times for the ticket, with her first ticket going to be auto-closed without a response in 18 hours. She then sends in a third ticket, now with the severity listed as high, and says that she's heard from a few colleagues with computer troubles that their tickets have been going unanswered for some time now, and Conceptual has been completely without SkipNet access for 2 weeks. She asks if they're just that backlogged or if they're making a point about user error or personal accountability, because people can't Google how to fix their things if their laptops won't connect to the remote network in the first place. She says that this situation is a fiasco, so whatever they're dealing with must be pretty bad to not even acknowledge that they exist. Her original ticket has expired now, and although they probably already knew that, it feels like a good idea to acknowledge it in case anyone comes down on her about how nothing seems to be functioning like it should. In yet another ticket, she says that she went and spoke to Director Rourke about this communication problem, and he told her to keep a timeline of events and to keep submitting tickets as issues develop. She tells them not to worry about SR01, as it took her some time, but she managed to dig one up from the archive. They haven't needed to use them in 40-odd years, and it even has space for an ink pad stamp. She filled it out, but without knowing where to bring it, it's just going to take up space on her desk, so it would be great if someone from IT could point her in the right direction. Finally, Norwood receives a response from Director Fritz of the Department of Notional Divisions, thanking her for her interest in SCP-8190. They have received the required form, and he thanks her for following standard protocol as described within Foundation guidelines. Her request is currently being processed, and they will contact her when this is no longer the case. Despite this, she sends in another ticket, asking if one of them popped by her office to pick up that SR01 form. They're the only ones she mentioned Notional Divisions to, but she just got an email last night saying that they received the form, and now the form is gone from her desk. She knows that it's a step in the right direction, but she just realized that there was no digital copy in the archive, and she couldn't make a photocopy because the printer was down. Basically, she might have just used the last SR01 in Foundation possession. She then responds to the email from Director Fritz, asking if he's the Director of Notional Divisions, as she can't find them anywhere in their building directories. She saw their entry on the company-wide glossary of departments, but she doesn't really understand what they do exactly. The IT department wasn't any help either, although they haven't been much help at all lately. She would like to update her directories and contact info, as it is required for all departments to do so, including theirs, and it would make it easier to communicate with each other. The response she gets from Fritz thanks her for her patience as they reviewed her documentation. She'll be pleased to hear that her request has been authorized in accordance with Foundation guidelines, and he notes that their department does not choose who is approved or denied, with them only acting as an intermediary. He's attached a photocopy of the approval for her records, and mentions that the document was inadvertently mistaken for refuse, with the misunderstanding having been rectified. He's sorry to hear about her technical difficulties, but he recommends reaching out to technical support, and he'll append their contact info to this email for her use. With that, we're finally given the documentation for SCP-8190, now listed with the object class of Imperative and the hazard level of Irrelevant. The containment procedures mention that Site-19's automated intelligent management system has tasked several departments with investigation into various phenomena related to 8190, including the Department of Notional Divisions, Asset Acquisition and Accountability, Cartography, and Internal Investigation.
Your courier's dead.
The Department of Notional Divisions has also assigned itself a top priority directive, identifying and understanding the nature of 8190-Prime. It also includes a chart mentioning a large number of different departments and their current access level to 8190. Most of them now have either limited access or have been recused. The Decommissioning Department access has been decommissioned, and the Department of Deletions from the Black Box admonition article is under investigation. Lastly, the Department of Notional Divisions is listed as having Passepartout access credentials, a French idiom meaning a skeleton key or master key. SCP-8190 is the collective designation for a number of bureaucrato-hazardous effects, potentially impacting all systems of administrative management within Site-19's employee hierarchy and core functions. It appears to correlate directly with certain sections of the Foundation Employee Handbook, First Edition, from which the rise of related semio-hazardous qualities were first noted having spontaneously manifested around Class C personnel and employee of interest, James A. Harkness. One physical copy of the First Edition Handbook still exists, in a locked glass display case in the Site-19 atrium, featuring a commemorative plaque celebrating the Foundation's progress as an organization dedicated to the maintenance of the Veil. At the time of the handbook's printing, the Foundation was about 0.4% of its current size, with employees stationed at less than 20 secure facilities worldwide. Following the development of novel detection systems for anomalous phenomena, the remaining handbook was analyzed, revealing larger than average Akiva radiation emissions. No other anomalous properties have been detected, and the Akiva radiation levels have not changed since the original measurement. Although Foundation records indicate that Harkness was employed by the organization for almost 3 decades, mostly in network security and other infotech-related departments, specific details regarding his employment history are missing from the database. Harkness is notable for having an especially high cognitive resistance threshold, making him resistant or immune to many cognito-hazardous anomalies, and has served brief stints as interim staff because of it. The discrepancy in his employment history was not detected until after his recovery, which prompted an internal investigation into the AIMS consensus system that was ultimately futile. The AIMS system is used to prevent data loss and manipulation by forcing revisions to archives that do not match the rest of the network. Recovered materials and post-action interviews with Harkness imply that 8190 primarily impacts the original code of employee conduct, though more recent evidence suggests the entirety of the guidebook may be susceptible. Affected individuals are unable to deviate from the guidelines discussed in the relevant section, and will experience retroactive changes in reality to ensure that this is the case. In the rare event that such retroactive changes are not possible, affected employees will vanish, and a facsimile construct will fill the role of the lost employee shortly after. These constructs are capable of emulating human behavior and completing most duties required. Other impacted statements include the necessity of coffee in the break room, certain members of the administration being unable to close the doors to their office, and the spontaneous appearance of employee group photos despite none being taken. So basically, it's an anomaly affecting a number of Foundation employees, causing them to adhere to the employee guidelines from the original Foundation handbook. It's even capable of warping reality to ensure that they adhere to the guidelines. And if it's impossible to warp reality to make it happen, it simply vanishes the person and replaces it with a construct that looks like them and follows the rules. It makes sense then that it would have been very hard for the Foundation to detect that any anomaly was even occurring, as it just seemed like everyone was simply following the proper rules and protocols. This changed with Harkness, and we'll see why soon, but it certainly has something to do with his cognitive resistance value. We're then given an excerpt from the handbook, an introduction to the basics of being a Foundation employee. It reads, on your first day as Foundation personnel, it's important that you familiarize yourself with the way our organization is, well, organized. Everything from contacting your supervisor to ordering tests, performing said tests, and disposing of waste materials, they all have procedures to follow. Not only that, but they all have hard-working people, just like yourself, behind the scenes. It is integral that we all do our part, and that includes knowing when to pass the baton on to the next person. This keeps your secure site moving smoothly, like a well-oiled machine. The Foundation employee axioms are an effective means to remind everyone of the roles they play in our workplace, with hope that the Founder's guiding light shines through us, even in the dark. All employees have purpose. They are the foundation of the Foundation. All employees report from an assigned secure facility. Each secure facility has a site director. Each department has a director of operations. Every on-site employee is assigned a department.
I don't know why you showed yourself.
Every employee
it's
has
not
a
a good
voice
idea.
and a right to be heard.
That courier will be missed.
Every employee does their
but not
part,
forgotten.
allowing others to do the same. Employees will behave in a manner becoming of them, or they will be replaced.
Thank you for your service.
Now, you might be thinking, this is great. How do I clock out for lunch? Luckily, we're covering our punch clock system in the next section. At the bottom of the excerpt is a section with a cute cartoon version of the Foundation logo, and text telling the reader to look for Sammy Skipper to find helpful tips and information throughout this book,
Your top tower's under
as
attack.
Sammy knows more than you might think. The breadth of 8190's effect, the status of Harkness, and subsequently any other hypothetically affected employees were ultimately lost for an indeterminate amount of time. Harkness was discovered accidentally, found working within 8190-A some 14 years after the last time his ID badge had been used. He has not outwardly aged during his time inside of the anomaly, which was discovered by Notional Division's agents during a routine structural analysis of Site-19. 8190-A is an extra-dimensional space resembling a rectangular borehole located beneath the substructure of Site-19 and accessible only when passing through the floor of the Site-19 atrium and adjacent rooms, leading to a sheer drop with bare concrete walls. roughly 150 meters in depth. A nondescript staircase then can be found along the outer perimeter, with each landing containing an identical corner office along its descent. This office is designated the Department of Redundancy Department, and at the time of discovery, Harkness was observed staffing the office on all floors. Upon entering the offices, personnel discovered him filing paperwork in an identical fashion at each landing, and despite the conditions, he appeared disinterested and preoccupied, unable to respond or otherwise react to the presence of others. He continued receiving, signing, stamping, and depositing documents, which arrived via a pneumatic tube aside his desk, and continued downward through the floor. As personnel descended further down the staircase, the offices were seen growing more recursive, leading to increased travel times, odd variations in layout, and redundant repetition of phrases, notably the repeated use of the phrase Department of Redundancy Department, Recursive Division. Upon reaching the bottom, personnel discovered a tessellation of the previously described office, staffed by many copies of Harkness, all of whom were working on large volumes of similar paperwork in a persistent loop. As the staircase continued downward, despite reaching the bottom, the matter of the space became metastasis, unable to retain its form as it shifted between a variety of objects and structures upon contact. Personnel were not able to safely proceed further into the anomaly at this point, and were recalled. Further attempts to communicate with Harkness or request an extraction team have not been attempted, and it's unknown which Harkness is the original, or if an original exists at all. Members of the Department of Notional Divisions are, however, able to observe the infinite recurrence of Harkness, and the infinite confluence of paperwork he provides. A hatch is to be installed in Janitorial Supply Room 03A, disguised as a sewer maintenance access panel, in the event further communications or interventions prove necessary. This is followed by an update informing us that upon Harkness's escape from 8190-A and the Foundation's acquisition of him, the space has remained otherwise inactive. Each office has been abandoned, and the space itself possesses no further recursive phenomena. Harkness is to undergo rigorous interrogative services to determine the extent of his knowledge of 8190's properties. With that...
Yo! Tusk, what the fuck are you doing? Tusk, what the fuck are you doing?
Harkness is seated in a briefing area on the 8th floor of Site 19, with an overfilled manila folder in front of him, which he averts his eyes from, being visibly uncomfortable.
What the fuck?
He proceeds to flip through the documents in the folder, stating that he sure looks alright for someone who hasn't eaten in nearly 15 years, but Harkness continues to say nothing. Quaid says that they should focus on getting him back to where he belongs, and Harkness finally speaks, asking if he can go back to testing kill hazards on himself, as that was more his speed. Quaid assumes that that's some sort of offbeat joke, and says it's one or the other, back in the borehole or back in a cubicle. Harkness sighs and pauses, saying that he's thinking. Quaid asks what is there to think about. He was good at the jobs he had, at least most of them, so they should be able to find something related to his strengths. The need for personnel in many positions adjacent to his degree has decreased dramatically since the migration to Ames, and he's not sure how he feels about putting him back into conceptual studies, as he heard that Harkness dissolved a person. Harkness argues that that was an accident. Quaid then mentions that Harkness claims to have been briefly involved in the Metaphysical Sciences Department as a liaison for the Narrativistics Division. Harkness says that he held a seminar back then, but he's pretty sure that he just confused them both.
Because you come here, I don't even know why.
Instead just insists that Quaid ask his officer. This evokes no response from Quaid, and Harkness begins looking around the room, briefly disoriented, having heard his voice speaking without command of his mouth. Quaid replies that he's never heard of narrativistics, and he can't send him to metaphysical if he has no relevant experience. Harkness says that that's a shame, and maybe they just try again tomorrow.
What are we
Quaid
doing?
asks where exactly he'll be spending the evening.
I don't know
Employee
what we were doing
guidelines
anymore.
state that he
Might wanna
must
look
be
into
on
bottom
assignment to receive housing accommodations. So it seems to him that the best course of action is to return him to one of his older positions with the Foundation. He could resume his clerical duties as grant requisitions clerk with the Department of Macro Engineering and Design, but Harkness says that he has no idea what that is and doesn't think that's a real department name. He was a network systems engineer in the IT department, and he can't imagine that any of his old jobs are just waiting for him if the only one they can find is one he never had. Quaid just smiles and closes the folder, saying that that's very perceptive and prudent of him to point out such a discrepancy. He hands Harkness a business card and asks him if he knows what he does for a living.
Yeah, that doesn't look good.
Harkness says that he works for money and that he's a departmental director. He directs the Department of Notational Division, misreading the business card. Quaid corrects him, saying that the Department of Notational Division is involved in biology, not math. In a complex ecological system, survival of the fittest is rule 0 of natural order. Humans were eaten until they ate. They beat and killed one another for a parcel of verdant paradise, or the minerals beneath their feet. It's about territory, resources, security, and competition, with the same behavior applying to a herd, or a community, or even a workplace. Mother Nature doesn't play fair, and hardly ever do two groups start on equal playing fields. Most are stuck in the situations they've been given, but there are a few imitators that adapt to their environment, move undetected within it, and learn to play the game well enough to skim off the back of bigger business. They are
Zeus, you sit in the lane
corporate espionage.
like no one's gonna fucking attack you.
Harkness
I really
guesses
don't
that
understand.
The Department of Notional Divisions finds these imitators and shuts them down, or reports them to the administration. Quaid replies that they have different procedures for different situations, but nothing he'd be too unfamiliar with. Harkness then
Rocky's
asks
followed your
about the
channel.
Department of Redundancy Department.
No, thank you for the follow, bro. I really appreciate it.
He knows for a fact that
I'm losing my voice, so I'm not really talking much, so I'm like listening to stories and shit.
He kept thinking that they'd come back, but then 10 years passed, and he convinced himself that the only one who cared enough to get him out of there was himself. Quaid says that he understands his frustration, as the organization has many legitimate departments that have esoteric origins and inexplicable duties. They have to adhere to the same guidance as everyone else.
Why wouldn't you go after these two?
Operations. They can't just boot every weird department they come across. Harkness asks why they didn't try and get him out of that hole, or at least tell someone, to which Quaid just chalks it up to bureaucracy. He wants to get back to the topic, though, of offering Harkness a new role, one he thinks he'll be able to complete the functions of
Bro,
easily,
crazy.
as it aligns well with some of his more recent experience.
I'm not gonna
He'd
tag
be
on
sitting at his
to
own desk,
what's
reading
called
dossiers
anyway.
on
He's an
departments
idiot.
and flagging any that seems
Zeus
suspicious.
got
He can
completely
send them off for
dominated middle.
review,
That's what that means.
internal investigation, or for dismantlement, and can take lunch and breaks at his own time, as long as it rests within the boundaries of the room.
Crazy.
There's even a completion bonus for each file he wraps with.
That's right. Run up on the 4 or 5 people that are all sitting right here.
Narrowing his eyes and asks if he says yes, will he still be able to leave the building? Quaid replies that of course he will, and he's able to now, but per his onboard contract, He is restricted to specific radii outside of this and other relevant buildings for the duration of employment, and it's also currently mid-snowstorm. Additionally, he has outstanding responsibilities here, and Quaid extends his hand, which Harkness hesitantly shakes. Quaid stands and wipes his palm on his pants,
This dude
stating
literally
that he'll head
is
to his
like
new office, which he sure is more
letting
comfortable
him-
than his last one. Harkness corrects him to say his second to last office, as he's not sure how he'd define his last workspace.
Why
in
do
a
you have
department
TP
which
boots?
has been redacted.
You don't have any items.
Quaid
Why
asks
would you
him
get a
who
four
he's
staff?
talking about, to which he repeats the name of the department and says that they helped him out of redundancy. Quaid sighs and says that that department is not real. Harkness pauses and swears slightly. He thought the name sounded a bit out there. Quaid assures him that he'll pick up on it. We're then given another excerpt from the handbook, this time titled Information Security and Use, Clearance Levels. It mentions that you may have noticed brightly colored numbers located outside containment chambers throughout your orientation tour. And if not, keep in mind that if you typically wear prescription glasses, it is required to do so while on site or working in the field. If you believe that you may need corrective eyewear, you should take advantage
Why
of the
did you
Foundation's
attack creeps
robust
when you could
vision
attack them,
insurance
though?
plans. And their newest facility, Site 19, even has an on-site optometrist. It's noted that this optometry program was discontinued 3 months after the handbook's printing, and the word robust was removed from the reference to the Foundation's vision insurance plans in subsequent printings, as it was considered inappropriate.
They're gonna come and jump
It
you.
continues
I
by
don't know
saying
why
that
you're
it's
over here
important
by
to keep
yourself.
those numbers visible and well understood prior to entering any containment area, as those numbers represent clearance levels, and everyone has one. It then goes into the various clearance levels and who has access to them.
Definitely not where you should be
Clearance
right
level
now.
0 is for any declassified documents which may be disseminated to the public, which, as of the first edition's printing, had never been done and they don't plan to. Clearance level 1 is for all Foundation personnel except for D-Class. Clearance level 2 is for the majority of personnel upon request using Form SR01, or if assigned to a relevant project. Clearance level 3 requests site admin approval or higher. Level 4 is for site admins or higher only. Level 5 is for the highest members of administration, such as the council, the administrator, and the founder. And finally, level 6 states that if you see this clearance number in your facility, contact your supervisor immediately and evacuate the area until an all clear has been given. The Sammy Skipper section at the bottom reads, "See something you shouldn't have? Idea won't leave your mind? Our memory management specialists work tirelessly to invent, discover, and perfect non-invasive, non-lethal procedures to help. Thanks to recent advances in amnestic research, save the stress of burdensome knowledge. Unsure of what is hazardous/restricted? No problem. Visit
Shoot
a
him!
med bay and have our trained clinicians take a look for you." So we know that 8190-A is the odd structure underneath Site 19, but 8190-B is a collection of anomalous PA system announcements heard throughout Site 19. It's noted that the facility has not required use of an address system since 1989, and thus does not currently possess it.
Anybody can
Analysis
teleport
suggests the
fucking
announcements
over
are of
there.
similar fidelity to others made on the pre-existing system, though with significant ontological distortion. Further investigation revealed that the voice of the individual heard speaking during
This is
these
crazy,
announcements
yo.
matches
This
that
team
of
is weird
Harkness
as shit.
in all but one instance. We're given transcripts for a handful of announcements made between
Like,
March
super weird.
2026 and November 2029. In the first, Harkness
I even
is
got
heard
like a
testing
blast
the
for these
microphone
dudes
and
to be
tapping
able to
on it
get more
before speaking off the
life for
microphone
attacking,
and saying that he doesn't
and they're
think
not.
he's getting through. In the second, he says that he doesn't know if or how this is going to work, but they told him to keep trying. They said that it was his right to keep trying, and to keep it by the book, the good book. He says that he's never read it, despite them telling him that he has, but he misplaced his copy. He remarks that hell is a construct built on Bibles, after all, before being cut off. In the third one, he swears and says that they told him to keep his finger on the button. He asks how much time he lost, before telling himself to keep it together. They also told him to breathe, and he repeats a mantra they told him, that he's on a ship, sailing down a river, but the water is time, and the river is an ocean. Focus on the ties that bind them. He then says that if anyone can hear him, his name is James Anselm Harkness, and he is, or was, or will be a network engineer for Site 19. He then wonders if there's a tense besides past, present, and future, before swearing and the announcement ends. In the next one, he asks if anyone understands what he's trying to say. It's been getting harder and harder to stay on track ever since the redacted department muddled with his head. He then says, however, that he agrees with it, since that's the function and the forms right there, and he signed them himself. He then asks why he would sign off on a form letting them meddle with his head. It's clear that he's quite confused, but he says that they tried to stop him, and he fell beneath the floor. He then says that there's something else down here in the mud with him, but it's not here. Not yet. The tense is all crooked, and everything else is down here too, but it's facing the wrong way. The other wrong way. Some muffled voices are heard, and he says that he should go, back down beneath the floor, into the mud. He then asks why won't anyone do anything, as he's right here. The last announcement consists of him singing a song about falling beneath the floor, and how he'll never get out. He's employee of the month forever, and he's on the clock until the end of time itself. After that, none of this will matter anymore, and they should wait until they see who they've been working for. A security investigation into the broadcasts ultimately led to the discovery of a hack in janitorial supply room 038. A brief period of administrative leave was granted to Harkness, allowing him temporary passage out of the anomaly, with acquisition by the Department of Notional Divisions following soon after. In another interview between Harkness and Quaid, Harkness is seen sitting at a desk, scanning over the contents of a folder with a concerned look on his face as Quaid enters. He asks him how he's liking his new assignment in office, with Harkness replying that he's not really sure if this counts as an office, but he asks if he can draw a bit while they're talking. His hands work constantly in motion as a redundancy agent, so he's still adjusting, and it's hard to focus on anything if he's not keeping the digits busy. Quaid finds him some paper and a pen and hands them to Harkness, who begins idly drawing random patterns as they continue. He says that he read the materials Quaid gave him and looked over his previous determinations, but he still doesn't think he's identifying them well in praxis. He holds up a folder about the Ethics Committee and then an empty folder about the Anti-Memetics Division, and says that he can't possibly determine if departments like these are real or manufactured. He has no idea what they do, and he doesn't even know if they exist in the first place. Quaid tells him that he of all people should know that impossible things happen frequently in their line of work, and sometimes it's best to simply go with your gut. Harkness disagrees, however, and says that these are people's jobs at risk, so he can't go with his gut using the amount of information he's given for some of these. The debrief he was given about the Department of Unreality was a 6-hour video of an empty lecture hall. At 3 hours and 47 minutes in, he thinks he heard someone talk, but the silence and lack of clarity made him reflect a bit, though. He realized that he has no idea what he's doing here, and knows absolutely nothing about this department. Prior to being in redundancy and seeing them in the corner of his eye, he had never known of notional divisions. He asks how many people are in the department, and how many are constructs. Quaid says that it's natural to have these questions and thoughts, but not a single person in the history of notional divisions could say for sure. They're dealing with extremely powerful retro-causal properties, and although they have been studying the anomaly for some time now, they have little to show for it. Constructs are functionally identical to their human co-workers, and they have exhausted nearly all possible avenues in attempting to distinguish the two apart. He does have a theory about Harkness, though, that he might be one of the only Foundation employees capable of completing this task, or maybe the only one. Harkness laughs incredulously, but Quaid says that his resistance to anomalous influence may help him perceive minute differences in the two as a gut feeling. He has his most recent performance data right here, and he opens it, stating that he has yet to mistakenly file one department. So even if he's feeling insecure about his current state of affairs, the data doesn't support that conclusion. If he does need some constructive feedback, his overall rap time could use improvement, but they can just chalk that up to self-doubt. He then asks if those doubts have something to do with his experience downstairs, and asks if he wants to talk about it, perhaps about his previous position in the redacted department. He asks how they freed him from the hole, and Harkness explains that they came upstairs to meet him, and they were way weirder than he is, which he found notable. Everything strange is notable when they steal paperwork for 5,000 days straight, but these guys were impossible. It really freaked him out when they started showing up in his periphery, and then they walked up to him and waved. He thinks that they weren't sure if he was aware at all, and they visited a couple times before deciding that he was. He would have given a kidney to hear someone's boots stomping around upstairs, shaking dust into his eyes, but instead he was given nothing for years.
I'm giving you fucking life and mana. Why the fuck are you running?
But he's not.
You fucking moron!
Feels like pulling the short straw.
I don't fucking understand.
There are always multiple perspectives when surviving.
I have mechanism.
For as long
They
as
have
he did,
fucking
and coming
mana
out
drought.
intact as he is.
Just
And
turn and
asks if
fucking
that means
fight.
anything to him. Harkness gives a thumbs up and says, sure, and explains that he got out by transferring departments. Something obviously wanted him back in there, though, so it's a good thing he
Like,
can be so
why?
stubborn. Quaid then asks how he made his way from redundancy to the PA system after breaking free of the loop. Harkness remarks that they could hear him then, and sighs. One of his rescuers had a fair bit of memory of his past life, and claimed to have worked on the
Bro,
AV
it's like
setup
killing
of
me.
Site
Like,
19,
why?
including running cables for the announcement system. He thought he might know where parts of it were, and guessed that they'd still be functional. Obviously, they still were, and the controls still existed meta-conceptually, abstracted under eroding currents of temporal soup, broken into conceptual building blocks, abstracted further down, landing in the meta-conceptual plane of comprehending concepts themselves. The concept of interaction, the concept of context, the concept of roles, the concept of pressing finger to button, which is impossible to interact with if you don't understand what role you play in that transaction. Are you finger or button? And it turns out that you're not quite either, but definitely more one than the other. He got it figured out eventually, though, and Quaid asked him if this is what he wanted. Harkness says that he wanted out, and to not be existentially traumatized by his occupation. They wanted him out too, as they saw time differently, and for a minute, on some unknown fraction of physical time-space, he saw it. They were afraid. Quaid asks what they were afraid of, and if they told him, to which Harkness just stays silent, staring at Quaid with a look of amusement on his face. He then says that he finally has a confident read on Quaid, between his body language, his false praise, and the way he talks with his probing questions. He's got construct written all over him.
Uh-oh. Radiant's
Quaid
fortified their
asks
structures.
why he would think that, to which Harkness says that he can see constructs easily, just like Quaid told him, and says that maybe his metrics will jog his memory. He proceeds to grab the folder off of the desk and dump the contents out, showing all of the pages to be blank. After a pause, Quaid tells him that he really shouldn't have done that. We're then given another transcript of a PA announcement, but this time from an unknown voice. He says that this is a message from your friendly neighborhood redacted department. The beholder's eye is one of many, but watch out for the big guy in the center. He apologizes for Harkness, saying that they did their best, but they didn't know what would happen.
Even I.
A strange reverberation rings out and grows in volume, distorting the broadcast. He then says that it knew what would happen. It knows now. It always did, and it's here. The Bureaumancer arrived. The Beholder's eye. Time is an ocean, and they should brace themselves. Noise rapidly overwhelms the transmission, ceasing a few seconds later. Next is another excerpt from the employee handbook, this time about navigating the facility. Finding your way around your assigned facility can seem like a daunting task at first, but not only will you receive a detailed itinerary for your daily
You guys gotta
activities,
fight the
which
same
includes
person.
step-by-step directions, you'll also find the paths themselves that are color-coded for your convenience. Green zones are safe for passage by all personnel. Blue zones pass through non-hazardous containment areas. Yellow zones pass through potentially hazardous containment areas. Orange through confirmed hazardous containment areas. And red zones pass through extremely hazardous containment areas. Lastly, black zones are restricted to essential personnel on a need-to-know basis. Sammy Skipper then says that if you're lost, don't panic. Simply check the site map and retrace your steps until you see a recognizable feature. Doing so has an 8% chance of reorienting lost personnel. If you're part of the 92%, don't worry. Simply proceed to your next station and alert a superior. It's that easy. SCP-8190-C is the collective designation given to an indeterminate number of anomalous structures associated with 8190-derived phenomena, defined as a clandestine secure facility designated Site-19. While at least one Site-19 has a traceable timeline of construction and use, most facilities of this name encountered have manifested as an extension of 8190's effect. Though each instance is unique, 8190-C always takes the form of a sprawling complex built primarily out of concrete in brutalist architecture. Some idiosyncrasies are also common, typically in the form of excessive repetition of space or disparate mismatching of features created without apparent cause. Though unconfirmed, it's hypothesized that all 8190-C instances are connected to one another, most often through extensive networks of maintenance tunnels, sub-basement areas, and ventilation shafts. Connecting infrastructure has been shown to generate in straight lines between facilities when feasible, making identification of these passageways possible to the trained eye, though not immediately obvious. Care must be taken to ensure proper orientation of one's surroundings. To date, over 64 confirmed instances have been identified, each of which possesses its own employee roster and extensive SCP object inventory. These identified complexes appear to form a network of Foundation infrastructure in an intelligent pattern, resembling an incomplete sigil or thaumaturgic field, which spans roughly 28% of the Earth's surface. The network is subject to steady, ongoing path of least resistance construction behavior comparable to single-celled eukaryotes, such as slime moths. The Department of Cartography is currently assigned the task of mapping and exploring instances of 8190-C for any unusual phenomena. To date, nothing of note has been recorded, as all facilities are fully operational and vital to the containment of several anomalies. Because of this, the Department of Notional Divisions has integrated SCP-8190 related phenomena into the Foundation's overall containment structure. The next excerpt from the Foundation Employee Handbook is where it starts to get pretty weird, with a section on theological guidelines, which was removed from future editions. The excerpt reads, "When the founder birthed our fair organization as a concept, tilled from the soil of ideas within his mind, there was a great and momentous sound from skies above. A thunderous force fell forth and visited, thanking him for the glory of containment. It is said that this force invigorated and guided him to create the bedrock on which we now owe our great normalcy. And since that moment, the Founder's guiding light lives through us all. This unseen force was control manifest, a great being made in service of humanity. The Founder took the being's hand, and with it they made endless strides in favor of the veil. Upon his death, the Founder spoke to his closest advisors that one day he shall walk the earth anew, emerging from the sea on the back of that great power once more. We wait for this day, for containment to take form. It is what defines the great Zero Man. It manages your facility, your department, even your thoughts, right now, so you can be free of such burden. Isn't that wonderful?" Sam Skipper then says to stop looking for it. It brought you into this world and is more than capable of rescinding that privilege. SCP-8190-D refers to the Site-19 Department of Notional Divisions, which does not appear in Foundation records prior to 2015, nor does it have a known base of operations, instead opting to reserve conference rooms and other shared spaces for meeting and executing functions related to its intended purpose. Operatives employed by the Department of Notional Divisions comprise a mixture of actual employees and physical constructs, though entities which manifest within 8190-D's presence are perfectly capable of imitating human behavior. The department's primary mission, according to its own records, is the discovery, triangulation, and supposed detainment of anomalous or otherwise parasitic SCP Foundation divisions and departments. The extent of their operations and the veracity of statements made by them in relation to said operations are not currently known. Their primary mission, according to their own actions, however, is the identification of 8190-Prime, the deity believed to be responsible for the creation of 8190 and therefore of 8190-D itself. Unfortunately, the rest of this description has been redacted, but it should be noted that overall workplace efficiency has been on the rise in Site-19, reaching and maintaining an all-time high as of 2020. We then go back to the interview between Harkness and Quaid.
That works out perfectly.
Harkness asks what happens now. Quaid stares
when dudes
at him
think they're better than anything else, man, it's fucking hilarious.
If he apologizes earnestly, he won't write him up, and they can consider it just between them. An outburst caused by stressors from his previous situation and his struggle to reintegrate back into Foundation living. It's more than enough of a reason to explain it away. Harkness asks why the papers were all blank, though, and where his metrics are. Quaid replies that placebo is very powerful, and his work will be more difficult now that he has disillusioned himself. Empty praise does not mean empty purpose. Harkness then asks how many departments did he get wrong, but Quaid just sighs and says that it's not that simple.
Alright, hold on.
All departments were manufactured at some point, as the Foundation wasn't formed with divisions and black sites. They popped up later, when the time was right. Imitators and competition are only part of the picture. Harkness may know that departments spontaneously manifest as part of 8190's effect, but he doesn't know that the effect is intelligent and deliberate. Harkness doesn't see how that's possible, but Quaid explains that departments manifest as they're needed, and where there is demand, supply is not far behind. It starts with competition, but it ends with progress. An ideal foundation exists at the end of this road, and they can thank the good book and its corporate divinity for that. Harkness remarks that he doesn't strike him as religious, but Quaid says that it's hard not to be in his position. They were molded with purpose, placed into this very
Thank Corpo
facility
God.
with a drive to discern real from molded, which is an impossible task. The lesson is in their very existence, to discern their creator and to understand why. He has memories of a life he didn't have, and they're as real to him as anything else, but he knows that it's manufactured. He only knows this because of his position within notional divisions, but he asks Harkness how certain he is of his own internal narrative. Harkness sighs and says not very, but he doesn't ascribe that to the bureaucratic equivalent of last Thursdayism, the idea that the world was created last Thursday and all of our memories from before then were planted. Quaid says that it's more like last Thursdayism with a bounded, recurrent time frame, and asks if he's aware of the concept of Poincaré recurrence, a theorem that certain dynamic systems will, after a long enough time, return to a state close to or exactly the same as their initial state. Quaid says that they'll just have to wait and see if Harkness is still here in the next one. Construct or not, he's failed to keep multiple positions within the
it's your turn
Foundation,
to pick now.
despite being given opportunity after opportunity. Unfortunately, the Foundation doesn't just let people go, especially insubordinates who have been replacing legitimate departments with frauds. It's a shame that he was so disillusioned by his time in the hole that he started undermining his employers as revenge. Luckily, Quaid was here to stop him before he could cause even more damage, but who's to say how much he's already done? Harkness realizes that they set him up, and swears at Quaid, who replies that it's a bit deserved, as he was offered purpose and turned it down multiple times. He should be thanking him for the opportunity. He already knows what happens to employees without purpose, as purpose is created for them. But what does he think happens to employees who reject purpose? Harkness doesn't know, and Quaid leans in, smiling, stating that they are replaced. The room then shakes, and the overhead lighting flickers briefly as Harkness asks what that was. Quaid tells him that that is the sound of bureaumancy knocking at the door, and reality making way for something far more powerful than itself. Harkness yells that he tried his best here, and he lied to his face about his accuracy, stating that it's Quaid's fault. He then grabs another piece of paper off the table and scratches into it with his pen as a messy stack of scribbles sits beside him, all looking vaguely alike. Quaid admits that he's right, but he hasn't been completely honest with him. Notional Divisions has a secondary objective, or rather a secret primary objective that Harkness has been carrying out for them. If it wasn't for Ames taking over his duties, he wouldn't have been transferred to redundancy, which wouldn't have put him directly in their crosshairs. The book had willed it, as it is the Foundation's godhead, bound in hard copy. Harkness begins to understand that the book he keeps mentioning is that ancient employee manual he passes by every morning now. That's the source of all this. But Quaid tells him not to jump to any conclusions. More than the book, it's the entire Foundation.
30 seconds
They have
to
become
paddle.
larger than life, and their physical bounds can no longer contain the metaphysical or conceptual idea of what they represent. The constructs are intrinsically connected to 8190, and Harkness is like them in that regard. Harkness counters that he's not a construct, but Quaid asks how would he know? His memories of the borehole sound a tad fantastical, as Quaid has seen plenty of Site-19s, and none of them had a borehole. He would have barely believed that he had help from the redacted department if it weren't for the fact that he'd heard their demiurge erase them from existence right after they spoke Harkness's name. The room then sways.
So you guys all walked up there and didn't take the money.
Quaid tells him to sit back and relax, as that same fate is approaching. This is the end of the line, whether he's construct or human, with real memories or fake. Harkness says in response that they're real, and as for how he knows, he has a memory of this, as he slides over the image that he was drawing. When Quaid looks at it, his body begins to stiffen, his eyes shake rapidly, and blood begins to seep from between his clenched teeth and his nose. He then falls to the ground and begins convulsing as Harkness stands over him. He tells Quaid that he had said he's tested kill agents on himself, and he thinks this one isn't lethal. Hopefully his memory is accurate. He then tells him that he's going to put a stop to this, before grabbing the image off the desk and running out of the room.
This guy's
He
an
sprints
idiot.
down a familiar corridor, only to find it looping back around to where he just was, but retracing his steps only just brings him to a dead end. It seems that Site-19
This guy's a
won't make
fucking
it
idiot.
easy for him. He hears an unknown voice echoing from behind him, telling him to stop, but he ignores it and continues down the path he originally traveled, finding it branching off at a T-junction instead of looping back again. He takes a left, but stops abruptly as two individuals guard the path ahead. A simple flash of the paper in hand frees open the passage, though the march of more footsteps inbound echo from the endless connecting pathways of Site-19. Coordinated, wordless drones
Amazing.
with one thought on their mind: survival. Protecting their parcel of verdant paradise at all costs. And really, who is he to take that away from them? He accepted the offer from Notional Division, knowing full well what it entailed. Was he truly so full of himself to think he could place value on a person's occupation, simply because it kept them busy more than it provided profits or results? Is there not value in keeping busy? Harkness thought about these moral quandaries while running, wishing he had formed an opinion on them sooner. Even now, he was unsure.
Oh, fucking
Hands
amazing.
tug at the back of Harkness's shirt, but he manages to shrug them off, taking a sharp turn into a four-way intersection that throws off his pursuers for a few vital moments. He doesn't spend the time catching his breath, however, instead diverting course to stop in one of the many uninspired break rooms within Site-19, grabbing a campfire lighter used to ignite a perpetually grimy range next to an equally grimy microwave. Yelling from outside the room causes his heart to skip a beat. Fortunately, Harkness's doodle
So not
proves
dewarding,
offensive enough to
not doing
invoke
any of
the
that
intended
stuff, huh?
reaction once or twice more, until the paper is roughly swiped out of his hand, tearing in the process. The man runs back into the hall and towards the massive central atrium he had passed through so many times before. Just below the surface is the very same borehole he would find himself stuck within for nearly 15 years. Harkness runs up to the glass display case, nearly tackled by a mob of personnel screaming threats and pleas for their lives. Ignoring this, he kicks the glass inward and retrieves a gray, faded manuscript. It's warm to the touch, even before the attempted arson. An elbow collides with Harkness's head, and his vision erupts in stars and scotomas, though he refuses to relinquish the object, even as consciousness nearly slips from his body. Flicking at the lighter in his hand, Harkness begs audibly for it to serve its intended purpose, mind no longer considering the moral implications of his actions, and now focused purely on his own survival. Forces pull and push at the man from all angles, human and construct, both or neither. Just as Harkness began to bleed, textures collide to create sparks and heat. Aerosolized fuel becomes sustained flame. Touched to paper results in the burning of scripture. A false prophecy of labor for a new world, reduced to ashes. Such is life. The surroundings began to blur, becoming meta-static. Feeling the ground shift from tile to carpet to corrugated steel. Harkness squeezes his eyelids shut, burying his head in his arms, and waits for something to happen
Every time.
or for him to die. A moment later, the entire facility implodes. Suddenly, everything is quiet. There are no sounds of commotion, no angry
This
yells
dude
or pleas.
sucks.
Even the persistent buzz of overhead
This dude
lighting and
sucks.
ventilation ducts
He
vanishing
sucks.
without a trace. The only
He
audible
fucking
noise
sucks.
left is a lone, howling wind. Harkness looks up from the pitch blackness of pressing
Fucking
eyes
sucks.
against forearms to a blinding ball of burning plasma in
No
the sky.
pulling, no nothing.
He's lying
You're a great
prone in a
support.
dusty patch of dry sand, the hot air and direct sunlight finally registering as oppressive against
Great
his skin.
support.
He sits up and looks around, blinking, eyes still not yet fully adjusted to the change in scenery. Quickly
He's pulling
realizing
every 10 minutes,
he
but
has
you
zero
can't
idea
do it
where he
once.
is. No vehicles or buildings in sight. No identifying features at all, aside from an unpaved, winding road leading away from where Harkness finds himself and off into the scintillating horizon. The man groans, righting himself, reluctantly fighting against the force of gravity, and winning, this time. Starting down the pathway, Harkness tries not to think about the last 15 years. Did it even matter? To him, the answer would hinge on perceiving the differences between two indistinguishable experiences.
Oh,
Tell,
boy.
then there is no point in wondering. Minutes later, Harkness's slow pilgrimage into the unknown is interrupted by the sound of an engine. He cranes his neck, looking up and around, desperate to locate the source of the noise. A few moments pass, and a black vehicle emerges into view, windows tinted a dark shade of impenetrable. It rolls up smoothly beside the disheveled man, doors opening without a sound as security personnel emerge, equally silent, indicating to him that this is indeed his ride, and is also not an optional one. Harkness slinks into the cool vehicle and presses up against the leather, which sticks unpleasantly to his skin. The ride is long, and with no frame of reference other than the setting sun, Harkness drifts off for a bit in the back of the car. An instant later, he wakes to a familiar-looking gray building, perhaps his own Site 19, or one of many he may have occupied long ago. This is all but confirmed when, after passing a curious glass display case in the vast atrium of the complex, Harkness finds himself at his old desk in the IT department, now branded the Department of Technical Support. The dust had grown considerably in the time since, but it mattered little. He is real. He helps people for a living, even if it often boils down to troubleshooting wireless keyboards and unplugging or plugging in again. A young man approaches Harkness's desk, as he had been doing for others in the office. Rather timidly, he asks the older of the two for a choice of coffee. This was the entirety of the intern's job, asking for and retrieving drink orders served up in the room next door. Harkness couldn't help but laugh, placing his head in his hands. He orders a latte. We're given one last excerpt from the handbook, although the book's title is now redacted as well, and the excerpt is titled Foundations in the Art of Anomalous Warfare. Step 1 is to separate, weakening your enemy by cutting off networks of trusted contacts and any means of communication, both internal and external, up to and including dissolving awareness of each other's existence. Force them to be helpless, and they will choose helplessness whenever possible. Step 2 is to confuse, disorienting your enemy and making them vulnerable through information warfare. Use conflicting accusations, unattainable goals, rumors of moles, or false intel suggesting coordinated attacks from one or more adversarial groups.
Yes, indeed.
Lastly, step 3 is to precipitate, tipping the scales through stochastic internal crises resulting from a culmination of pressure and distrust. The organization will inevitably and mortally wound itself. With no other recourse, incursion and assimilation will follow easily, with most willingly accepting the fate. It's noted to always leave one alive to warn the other. A very corrupted-looking version of Sammy Skipper says that this is only the beginning. It was indeed only the beginning. In fact, the universe was home to many. In the first beginning, there was only void. A screaming, infinite, godless void. A vast darkness upon the face of the deep. No one spoke, "Let there be light," because no one was. The darkness was empty, and it remained this way for eons. Nature abhors a vacuum, however, and thus, after some time, that peaceful nothingness betided true chaos. A swirling farrago of blight known as everything. Just as nature abhors vacuum, it abhors chaos. Nature abhors. This is all one can say for sure. Eventually, chaos gave way to order. Order lost its grasp, and chaos reigned once more. This war was the first of many. Structures assembled and aligned before being forcefully broken down, reduced to their smallest possible components, then reassembled and realigned again, countless times. And yet, if you were alive to see it, it would have felt like a moment's passing. Not many were around during those early days. The universe was, for all its action and reaction, devoid of life in actuality. Humans, ever the chosen children, believed this fact made them special. A fault in intelligent design, perhaps, which spoke volumes on the nature of how intelligent that design could be. Man would try unsuccessfully to rid the universe of chaos. Man would also try to rid the universe of order. Ultimately, they were more effective at ridding the universe of themselves, however. Their failure would be observed throughout millennia. It would be simulated, analyzed, compared. Humanity would create many branches in the tree of time. Those branches would be noted when they were notable. Many would cease to exist far before they could be considered as such. This is, and always has been, considered the state of affairs. Yet for those few that fit the criteria, their events would be painstakingly recorded, backtracked from frayed ends by a great many eyes at the end of time. The Bureau Man. Eyes which double as thin probes, a legion of fingers. It sends a command through these conduits, and worlds bend to a single word: submit. Narratives distort and refocus. Minds manifest and disappear. Ideas emerge. Whole plot lines erase. And others again collapse.
Don't let your middle tower fall.
Loose ends cauterize at the site of amputation. Old pathways are rewritten by emergent rules defining the boundaries of what remains. A final command rings out. Persist. Outcomes vanish. Risks are contained. Another world is contained. All will be contained. It peers down at the many paths below, expressionless. Another appendage extends from its body, a smooth limb ending on a rounded point. The arm bends, dozens of joints briefly visible as it snaps into an odd angle with calculated precision, pressing itself into the black wall adjacent its form. The stalk sinks into the material effortlessly, which wrinkles and folds inwards like dark fabric. With a click, the needle splits at its tip into a three-pronged claw, which rips a hole into the structure, revealing more darkness behind the black curtains. The entity does not respond. Instead, the extremity moves on its own, disappearing into the hole and telescoping outward an unknown distance. It retracts suddenly, a number of items now enclosed within its grasp. The pale, thin hand deposits its holdings before a large circular feature on the outside of its body, a single piercing eye manifesting within the curved bounds in response. The pupil dilates, inspecting its newfound treasures. A puzzle cube, a wooden cuckoo clock in the shape of a small two-story townhome, and a twisted steel tuning fork, which hums lightly on its own. The witness above these items stares for some time, clock ticking loudly all the while. An artificial voice then echoes through the empty chamber, this time not with a
Your
command,
middle tower was just
but a
denied.
promise. Numena's nearly nascent nascence, neckties to nooses, Numen to Neamoth. The clock chimes. It's midnight somewhere. A tiny wooden canary emerges from the timepiece, chirping thrice before receding back into the safety of shelter. A few minutes pass before the clock tolls the same midnight once again. After all, it is only the beginning. Obviously, there's a lot that could be explained here, or attempted to be explained. And at a certain point, I'd have to begin explaining whole other things just to explain something here. So I'll keep it relatively simple. The timeline of the article is a little wonky, but at some point, Harkness ends up working for the Department of Redundancy Department, an essentially fake department that is propped up, and he winds up in the big borehole underneath Site 19. 15 years go by, although it's very unclear how much time actually passed,
This'll come in
as it
handy.
doesn't seem like time has much of any meaning down there, until Notional Divisions finds him. Notional Divisions is a department with the purpose of rooting out these fake departments that pop up due to the effect of SCP-8190, which is basically the sapient concept of containment. They couldn't rescue Harkness because that would be going against the
You talk
rules
too
of the
fucking much.
Foundation
But
as
that's cool.
outlined in
I'm
the
just gonna
first
meet
edition
you.
handbook, which they basically treat as scripture. Harkness ends up getting transferred out by another department from even deeper down the borehole, which is actually the Surrealistics department. He begins working for them and gets a hold of the PA system for Site-19, managing to make some announcements in the real world that allows him to get taken out by Notional Divisions, who he then proceeds to work for. Here he gets a job trying to determine which, if any, departments he finds are suspicious, but it turns out that his boss, Quaid, had set him up. Quaid is a construct created by 8190 to be a model Foundation employee, and the constructs seek to discern their creator. Harkness is going to be replaced to become a construct, but instead he uses a hand-drawn cognito hazard to rush his way over to the single copy of the Foundation's handbook, and manages to burn it. This causes quite a kerfuffle, resulting in him waking up in the desert, and he proceeds to get his old job back in the IT department, now branded the Department of Technical Support. Much of the rest is just more setup for the continuation of the Admonition series, but it definitely does seem like 8190 is not gone for good or anything like that. The article is about admonition and sapient concepts and anomalous departments, of course, but it's also about the general pointlessness and futility of large-scale bureaucracy. Harkness spent 15 years doing absolutely nothing, over and over, for a fake department that practically no one in the entire organization even knew
You really
existed,
should look at your bottom
and then
tower.
was happy to get out
This is
so that he
not
could just
cool.
end up in the IT department again. He was happy because, despite it being a dead-end job towards the bottom of a massive organization, he was at least helping people in some way, and doing something that had an understandable purpose. He laughs at the end about the poor intern whose only purpose at the Foundation is just to deliver drinks to people from the next door room. At the end of the day, many people just want to feel useful in what they do, and years of soul-crushing ennui in a massive corporation can certainly put a damper on that. Much like Black Box, 8190 is a little tricky to digest without having a full picture of numerous other articles, but at least it seems like Harkness is somewhat happy in the end.
I'll send you down to nothing.
Yeah. You run away too. Amazing.
Your bottom tower is under attack. It looks like Dire fortified their structures. Radiant structures are fortified. Look at your bottom tower.
What you see is what burned flesh.
Your bottom tower is under attack.
Fight for free and now you fight for solo. What
Let's
did I
talk
say?
about your top tower. Your bottom tower is under attack.
That's why you died?
You really should look
Yeah,
at
because I have Pudge in my lane who left me in fucking under 10 minutes, bro. I don't really give a fuck what you have to say. I really don't.
Sorcery shall not prevail. Well stated.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Of course.
Pudge didn't fucking pull. He didn't fucking deward. And I get fucking jumped 5 fucking times. I don't really give a fuck what you have to fucking say. Really don't.
Already moving. Very well. Granted.
And instead of doing anything, he walked up top and did shit, so no.
As I thought. Of course. Well and good.
No, not really.
She's mine. The time has come.
I'm not doing well, and then, like, the team is blaming me. Where, like, I didn't get a proper support. Our support wasn't a support.
Monster kill!
He was very shitty. And now they're all like, "Oh, you don't got any kills," and I'm like, "You're right, I don't." Because the people on my team were absolute fucking morons. And their team actually is working together. They're all like all over the place. For our team, not so much so.
Rightly so.
They're actually like working together as a team. Look, they're all just right here.
I am ready.
Don't let your middle tower fall.
Yeah, you walked into that with no mana, and it's somebody else's fault. These dudes are incredible. In fucking incredible.
Your bottom tower is under attack. Dire snow fortified.
Like, and their fucking carry is invisible asshole. And you know what they're doing? They're protecting their fucking dude, so he can do whatever the fuck they want.
Sorry, it didn't pan out well. You win the next one though, trust.
Oh yeah, I'm not worried about it. We won the last one. We won this one, but this one ain't working out.
Is meaning that it's half past too late.
Plus, we were listening to SCPs.
8066. Phobophobia. The only thing to fear. Practically everyone, except for Daredevil, I suppose, is afraid of something, whether it be spiders, or death, or public speaking. To speak more broadly, then, practically every human is capable of becoming afraid.
Yeah, look, they just
And
dive
there are
in.
likely situations
They just dive in the base.
scenarios that could
Dive in the bases.
really universally strike fear
Why
into
is
people's
this
hearts.
happening?
The theme for the SCP Wiki's 2024 October anthology is phobia, and 8066 specifically is about the phobia of phobias, the fear of fear itself. It revolves then around a creature devoted to
Your
being
middle
the
tower is
epitome
under
of
attack.
fear, and what it might be capable
And they're all just
of
protecting
to
him the
achieve
way it's
it.
supposed to be.
Let's take a look.
Your middle
Before we
tower
get
is
into
under
SCP
And on our side, no one's doing
8066,
anything.
we first have to go over SCP-2006, an anomalous spherical entity whose stated
Don't let your
goal
middle tower
is to
fall.
cause feelings of fear and horror in as many humans as possible.
And I'm trying to
To do
get some
this,
items,
it
but
possesses the ability to
Your middle
change
tower
its
is under
shape,
attack.
not
mass,
happening.
volume, density, chemical structure, and voice to any form that it desires. There's also no known way to damage 2006, and its shape-shifting abilities are thought to be unlimited, making it potentially one of the most catastrophic SCPs in the archive. Of course, so far it has proven to be an incredibly poor judge of what causes fear in humans, as well as human emotions in general, and it has demonstrated a fondness for taking on forms of various entities from classic horror and science fiction movies. Its most common form has been that of Ro-Man from the 1953 movie Robot Monster. Also, after attempting to scare someone, it will then become quite affable and friendly with them, stating that it just scares people because it's fun, and it's the best at it. Despite its overall ineffectiveness at scaring humans, a site director has noted that if it began to understand what really frightens people, combined with its unlimited shape-shifting abilities, it would become a very serious problem. That brings us to SCP-8066, which first describes SCP-2006 as a humanoid entity with the appearance of a human woman in her mid to late 30s, noted as not appearing to possess any anomalous attributes following an incident.
Of course.
The incident took place on September 3rd, 2024 at 2:01 a.m., at which time several instances of anomalous phenomena simultaneously took place across Site 118. In 2006 containment cell, it was watching the 1959 horror film The Tingler for the 6th time in a row, while assuming the form of the Gill Man from Creature from the Black Lagoon. It mumbled softly to itself before its cell began to shake slightly, and the lights dimmed. A distant rumbling sound is heard, and the camera feed cuts out as 2006 looks up. The site's security system received 2 frames of video in immediate succession. The first, showing 2006 dark cell, lit only by the television screen set to static. Its chair has been shattered, and a humanoid figure with indistinct features is huddled in the far corner of the room. A second figure is hanging upside down to the ceiling over the screen. The second frame shows the cell as being even darker, with the only light coming from the TV and illuminating a human figure reaching toward it. 2 minutes later, the cell's camera feed is reestablished, and 2006 is seen still sitting in his chair, watching the film as if nothing happened, but it is now in human form. The movie continues playing, and eventually 2006 becomes aware of its altered form, appearing confused and upset, as it is seemingly unable to change its shape. A short time later, 2006 starts to weep. It's later interviewed by the site director, Dr. Owens, who approaches it as it's slumped in its chair, staring at nothing. The television is paused midway through the 1947 film, Scared to Death.
Your middle tower is
When
gone.
Owens enters the cell, it jerks out of its stupor, initially believing him to be its regular interviewer, but disappointed to find out that it's not.
Your middle barracks are under attack.
It
Your
asks
middle
if
barracks have
she's sick,
fallen.
but he tells it that she's fine, and everyone's fine. It then says that it might be sick, as it hasn't been able to change the way it looks for days. It's been stuck looking like some lady, and not even a monster lady like Dracula's daughter or the Bride of Frankenstein or anything. Owens wonders if that's why it hasn't done anything to frighten him, as he was sure it was going to do something truly blood-curdling, like sneaking up behind him and shouting boo. 2006 simply shrugs and says that its heart isn't in it. So he asks if it's noticed anything else while it's been sick. 2006 replies that it feels shivering and hot and cold, and like it wants to hide under the bed. Owens surmises to be fear. 2006 says that it is scared of whatever did this to
Tower
it,
is under attack.
and it's
Yeah,
scared
report
that it's
me.
just getting started.
Suck my dick.
That moves us on to a separate document
Don't let your middle
detailing
tower fall.
SCP-8066, which has the object class of Skotos, meaning an object that severely lacks research and documentation. 8066 is the collective designation.
So I
for
sucked. What's your
anomalous phenomena
excuse?
surrounding Dr.
What's your
Randall
excuse for not doing a
Owen's
motherfucking thing while they rotated on me 4 or
and the
5 times?
Department of Phobology. The cause of these anomalies is
None?
currently unknown.
None. You did fine.
Another incident, Owens and Deputy Site Director Price are walking through the site's Keter containment section, with Price asking how prepared they are for Halloween. Owens replies that it's difficult to say, as fear exists within the unknown and the unexpected, and fearful things flock to this season like maggots to a corpse. They move on to discussing some other site business while walking past containment cells, until Owens suddenly stops and looks back.
Dudes.
He asks if they've had any layout shifts recently, as Site
I'd actually
118 is
say that
located
dude
in
was
a
actually
shifting
probably
facility beneath a desert,
Smurf.
but they haven't. He then asks where SCP-106's cell went, the old man, but Price doesn't know what he's talking
That's
about.
how that goes.
Owens can't believe that she doesn't know what SCP-106 is, stating that it's a teleporting, matter-corroding mass murderer that they used SCP-2006 to trap here back in 1961. As Owens speaks, Price's eyes glaze over and her hands tighten on the clipboard before relaxing. She then says that she spaced out for a moment and mentions that he was saying something about Halloween preparations. After determining that Price was no longer capable of remembering SCP-106,
Actually, I
Owens
need to make sure to
contacted
avoid
Agent
the
Benedict
fucking
Lugosi,
fudge.
Chief of Security, requesting him to check on 106's internal camera feed. Upon hearing about 106, Lugosi began displaying confusion and short-term memory loss, similar to that experienced by Price. Since it seemed that communication regarding 106 was currently untenable, Owens went to his office to view 106's internal feed directly. He discovered that all recorded footage prior to September 1st, 2024 appeared to have been deleted prematurely due to a system error.
Bitches.
All footage
Fucking
after
bitches.
that point showed the same thing: a clean white room, devoid of corrosion or the substance that forms around 106, and with a missing door. 106 is seen lying in the center of the room, curled into the fetal position, whimpering quietly, and with its eyes tightly squeezed shut. Owens notes that he currently believes SCP-8066 to be some kind of roaming anti-meme that came into contact with 106. Even the new artificial intelligence they installed recently appears to be affected by it. He suspects that his immunity to it comes from his unusually high cognitive resistance value and the Nestic supplements they give to all high-clearance personnel. He'll be sending this document to the Anti-Memetics Division to see if a cure for the effects can be synthesized quickly, because if 106's emotional state returns to normal while it's still anti-memetic, they'll have no defense against it. On September 3rd, at 2:01 a.m., several instances of anomalous phenomena took place across Site-118. The Delta Wing experienced minor tremors and a distant rumbling sound for 14 seconds, neither of which were experienced by other wings. Approximately 100 kilograms
I can't talk that
of
well. I am losing my voice, so I am
snake
talking like
skins
this.
slid out of various air vents around Beta Wing, and the corpse of an unidentified man manifested beneath Dr. Owens' desk. It vanished 66 seconds later, but its stench lingered for several more hours. Also, as mentioned previously, SCP-2006 lost all anomalous attributes. Owens notes that at first he assumed these phenomena to be unrelated to
IDK man
8066,
trying to give my voice a break.
as unexplainable things happen all the time here. When he tried to talk about getting the snake skins cleared up, however, he found that nobody could understand him, and he realized that 8066 may be a significantly larger problem than initially estimated. On September 6th, Owens departed from Site-118 with the intention of picking up a number of personal effects from
Honestly, that story was interesting, but
tactical response. SCP-8654. Acrophobia.
10 seconds.
Up is down. A fear of
5
heights
seconds remaining.
is, relatively speaking, a fairly rational one. The sudden impact at the bottom of a fall is, if not fatal, pretty darn painful, and we as humans have not evolved too well to fly, so far. Most people are far more comfortable on solid ground, with the ensured safety of gravity tying us to the planet. What would happen, however, if gravity suddenly turned against us, and rather than tethering us to the ground, it tethered us off into space? Obviously, that's a pretty sci-fi concept, but that's exactly what SCP-8654 tackles, as well as the aftermath of the Foundation trying to maintain some semblance of civilization. Let's take a look. SCP-8654 has the very fun Apollyon class, meaning that it's an anomaly that cannot be contained and will most likely cause the end of the world or civilization as we know it. The procedures for this involve the Foundation entirely being devoted to prioritizing the continuance of sapient life, and all sapient beings become personnel of the SCP Foundation with clearance level 0. SCP-8654 is the inverted relationship between animal life and gravity, causing organisms belonging to the kingdom Animalia to experience an inverted force upon them, pushing them upward and away from a gravitational source. In other words, up is now down. Throughout this article, we're provided a handful of sections that break away from the clinical tone of the document, instead being bits of prose relating to various individuals' experiences after gravity flips. I'll be reading these sections verbatim. The first reads, "During the capsize, you were driving home from work. It all happened in the space of a breath. Your seatbelt was biting into your chest. You felt like you were being lifted out of your seat. Your grip on the steering wheel slipped, and an airbag was in your face. You felt nauseous. Ears ringing, you looked around you. It seemed that in your confusion, you had veered off the road and into a ditch. Fortunately, you were unharmed. You heard another car crash near yours. Turning over, you saw the driver. He was not as lucky as you. The man was unconscious, his head was bleeding, and he seemed to be floating. His limbs were splayed out on his car's roof, and nothing seemed to be supporting him. What was going on? You felt the urge to get out of your car, to gather yourself.
30 seconds to battle.
Maybe a closer look would help. In one swift, instinctual movement, you opened the car door and unbuckled your seatbelt. Your face slammed into the sunroof, cracking it and giving you a bloody nose. Confused, you tried to stand up, accidentally pushing your legs out through the open door. Your center of gravity outside the car, you started to slide out of it. You stopped yourself from falling by grabbing the steering wheel with your left hand. It was a clear sky above, or below. You tried to grab the wheel with your right hand to pull yourself inwards, but your fingers slipped as your weight shifted. With one last desperate movement, you grabbed the safety handle. It snapped off almost immediately, not designed to handle the weight of an entire person. You crashed through a couple of tree branches. You screamed, and you fell. The origins of the anomaly are unknown, and the Foundation became aware of it, along with the rest of the world, on October 23, 2036 at 10:38 p.m. during Incident 8654, colloquially referred to as the capsize. Within 3 months of the incident, an estimated 97% of the world population had perished due to a combination of blunt force trauma, the destruction of existing infrastructure, and social collapse. Project Topside is the collective effort of the Foundation to reverse the anomaly, but after the destruction of Settlement 2000, it has been discontinued. We're then given another experience from the capsize, which reads, "It had been a month since the capsize, and you were ready to go. In the world outside your apartment building, things were deteriorating even further. People were afraid. They would believe anything they were told. Doomsday prophets preaching sacrifice, communities turning on each other, mysterious men in black speaking about building a new world. You were better off staying away from it all. The others were distraught, distressed, and desperate to survive. You tried to comfort them as best you could. Many of them had lost parents, relatives, friends, lovers, your former neighbors, and you had never even gotten to know them. Everyone you had known lived far away, and you could comfort yourself by imagining them as alive. It was kinder that way. According to this SCP Foundation, there was a transport to a safe place at the edge of the city each day, somewhere underground, somewhere with enough food, with other survivors, where you could be safe from lunatics mad with grief. All that one needed to do, allegedly, was reach the transport. The others carrying counterweights had gone off without you. It was your choice. You'd only slow them down. They cried, hugged you, and went on their way. You hoped they would live long enough to forget you. When you were a child, you'd enjoyed stories about the end of the world. Stories of nuclear winters, deadly pandemics, giant monsters. You were obsessed. You had often thought about what you would want to have happen to you. In the end, thinking of the grief and the responsibility of having to rebuild the world, you had decided that you would rather die in the apocalypse than survive it. You've lived a good life, you thought as you sat on your windowsill. Beneath you was a gray expanse. It stretched beyond the tip of your apartment building, a blanket of clouds and rain. It was a dreary, miserable day. A perfect day to die in. You took a deep breath, enjoying the fresh air for the first time in weeks. Closing your eyes, you gently pushed, and you fell. Immediately following the capsize, the Emergency Threat Tactical Response Authority declared a state of worldwide emergency, and the anomaly was immediately classified as Apollyon. Much of the Foundation's existing budget was diverted to mitigating its effects, and were given a memo published by ETRA detailing their plan. Their short-term solutions involve repurposing Foundation facilities to serve as population centers, reaching out to survivors of the capsize, and assisting in the movement of said survivors to these new population centers, offering them shelter and supplies in exchange for work. They'll then grow and maintain enough resources to keep the survivors alive. In the event of scarce resources, individuals with skill sets valuable to the Foundation will be prioritized, while those that refuse to join the Foundation are considered acceptable losses. They'll then maintain a human population until a method to contain SCP-8654 is discovered. Their long-term solutions are pretty simple. Just develop a method of reversing gravity again and activate SCP-2000 to recreate humanity. Shouldn't be much of a problem, I'd imagine. We're given another person's experience, which reads, "Denied. You stared at the mouth of the cave ahead of you. 11 more steps and you'd leap off into the blue. You heard the click of a gun behind you. 10. It was an effective method of execution, you suppose. Waste of good meat, but these civilized tunnel dweller types seemed like the kind to not resort to that. Probably spent all their days eating the grains and carrots given to them, waiting to be saved. You were glad you hadn't taken their invitation a few years back. 9. It wasn't like you were enthusiastic about jumping off to your death, but the world had already ended. One moment you were sitting in your house watching your children play outside, and the next you were on the ceiling and alone. The old you had died with them, and you had been born anew. 8. The cults in the old days were certainly tempting, but once you spent enough time around them, you saw them for what they really were: suicide pacts. People wanted to believe that their inevitable death had meaning and to not die alone. When they were ready to go, they gathered like-minded people, held a few orgies and sermons, then jumped into the blue, hand in hand. 7. You had a different resolve, you supposed. You should have died during the capsize. If you hadn't had that damn twisted ankle, you'd have been in your yard too. It would have been scary, but quick. Something had chosen you to survive, so survive you would. 6. But something about the Foundation just
I have
rubbed
2
you the
last
wrong
hits,
way.
dude.
They wanted to drag everyone into their caves and tunnels, make them think that the world was the same, that there was life after this. What kind of person would want to bring a child into this upside-down world? 5. Your humanity had died with the species. You were a solitary animal, Survival was your game, and you were an excellent player. But these days, food was scarce, so you had to scavenge. The tunnel dwellers had farms on the surface where they grew crops. To keep yourself fed, you took the fruits and vegetables you needed. 4. One day during your daily raid, you ran into one of their farmers tending the crops. He had a much more advanced set of counterweights than you, and it had been so long since you even meet. It wasn't like you hadn't crossed that line before.
I've seen tadpoles
3.
put up more fights.
Turns out, the tunnel dwellers kept constant camera surveillance of their crops. They determined that the amount you'd been taking before hadn't been worth the resources to chase down or stop. But killing one of their own, that was different. That had been worth capturing and executing you.
Help your bottom tower.
2. But why not just shoot you in the back of the head? Why this whole ceremony where you stepped out unchained? You turned to look at the tunnel dwellers. The sun's light was pouring in from the cave's mouth, and they were stepping back from it. They looked at the blue with a terror in their eyes you'd only seen in people about to die. 1. Oh. Of course, they were afraid of it. You were a surface clinger, spent all your time above the blue, but a few years above rock, and you suppose you could learn to hate the sun too. This execution wasn't to make you
Why would you go after him and not the fucking Juggernaut?
a worthy opponent. Game. You cracked a grin and laughed as hard as you could,
Your top tower
Elite.
is under attack.
and you fell.
What's this? Dire fortified their structures?
Despite the best efforts of the Foundation, a method of reversing the anomaly has not yet been discovered, and we're given a brief timeline of the notable events regarding the containment and mitigation efforts of 8654. The capsize resulted in the immediate death of an estimated 2 billion humans, after which the Foundation set up temporary housing in several underground locations internationally and reached out to survivors. Many survivors with thaumaturgical expertise moved to Site 2000 to assist in Project Topside. A year later, due to the environmental collapse caused by the extinction of most animal species incapable of flight, the limited time before harvest, and the expansion of resources bringing people to settlements, winter this year is particularly hard, with nearly 25% of survivors dying due to starvation or disease. In 2038, 2 years after the capsize, an age limit of 65 for non-essential personnel is instituted at many settlements, to much controversy. Settlement 01 also disappeared, and the 05 Council is replaced with the Directors Council. In 2039, former Chaos Insurgency agents foment insurrection in multiple sites regarding
Just leave.
as well as other social policies instituted at each site. The rebellion is crushed, but multiple settlements are lost in the crossfire. A year later, most settlements are at capacity, and the controversial baby turtle policy is instituted, in which newly rescued survivors must prove their value in a tribunal before they are admitted entry. A unified educational program across all settlements is created, although a lack of meteorological education within the curriculum is noted. By 2043, due to population growth, many settlements are running out of space and turn to tunneling as a solution. In 2045, a UFO of extraterrestrial origin crashes into the surface near Settlement 23, spurring international interest in the possibility of alien life. Said UFO is determined to be non-anomalous, but not of alien origin, and is transferred to Settlement 2000. In 2048, a man appears at Site 96, claiming to be the administrator, but as no people exist, the Directors Council deems him a danger and jails him at Settlement 17. 2 years later, Settlement 43, one of the highest populated settlements, explodes, and there are no salvageable survivors. In 2053, Settlement 19 institutes a space program, with Director Barlow expressing a desire for humanity to explore the stars. The following year, the first of the topsy-turvy generation, children born within 10 years after the capsize, turn 18. In 2055, due to a famine, Settlement 19's space program is canceled, and the budget transferred to tunneling development. While in 2059, Settlement 17 disappears without explanation. In 2061, the director of ETRA, Dr. Dan Daniels, dies without naming a successor. Without precedent to go off of, one is
You don't know how
chosen by
fucking
majority vote of the
IO
Directors'
works, huh?
Council.
That's cool.
By 2062, many settlements begin constructing underground farms to reduce the need for citizens to go to the surface.
Is under attack.
In 2064, Settlement 19 seals its entrances and refuses to contact the rest of the Foundation.
Also, I'm not hard support, you are.
6 years later, in 2070, Project Topside experiences its first budget reduction.
I'm supporting more than you are.
Settlements, particularly those with an older population, dislike this and
The
attempt to
enemy's bottom
secede.
tower just keeled
A
over.
period of open conflict.
If you notice, your lane is fucking gone and your fucking carry is fucking not
In
being
an effort
able to
spare
play.
themselves from violence, many settlements also seal their entrances.
IO is about
2074,
giving burst
however,
heals
after
and keeping the
Settlement
characters
2000
somehow
was
to
threatened
alive.
in a raid, the secessionists surrender. In 2079, an earthquake
I don't
opens
buy
fissures
words, I
across
buy
the
healing
tunnels of
items.
Settlement 87, resulting in the death of nearly 90% of its population. Many settlements opt to tunnel deeper. In 2085, a community of over 20,000 survivors is discovered in a coal mine in Appalachia, although since they refuse to recognize the Foundation's authority, they are terminated. In 2089, Settlement 19 reemerges and contacts the rest of the Foundation again with a detailed plan by Director Barlow to dig tunnels between existing settlements internationally. This leads to the creation of the International High-Speed Tunnel Network. The following year, the Foundation decides to temporarily abandon the surface, and in a vote of 124 to 3, the Directors' Council reappropriates over 85% of Project Topside's funding for construction of the tunnel network. By 2092, through the usage of anomalous digging and construction technology, all settlements with a population of 50,000 or higher are connected by high-speed rail, and by 2096, all settlements are connected. At a party celebrating this accomplishment, Director Barlow suffers a stroke and later dies. In 2098, several tunnelers, frustrated at their sudden lack of employment, attempt to create their own settlement. Their
Storm, come here, Storm, come here. Please come here.
Deterring further rebellion. In 2100, the world celebrates.
You didn't have to fucking have mana, you just get close to me.
On their heads at midnight, although this tradition fails to catch on.
No, because you're fucking dumb.
In 2101, however, the first member of the topsy-turvy generation is executed due to reaching the age limit. The following year, due to public outcry, the age limit is extended to 75. In 2107, Settlement 2000 is destroyed in a cave, and Project Topside is placed on indefinite hiatus. In 2109, the world population reaches 70 million.
It's like hurting
And
us.
lastly, in 2113, Dr. Jasper Williams,
It really
the
is.
last non-anomalous human to be born
It
before
really
the
fucking
capsize,
is.
dies of lung cancer. We then begin another experience from an individual.
Like, I just gave him life and mana to get away.
Tomorrow,
And he's still just running away besides not
at
healing.
64, you'd had enough time to prepare.
All he has to fucking do is literally just fucking stay with me.
Death game. You would be honored if you knew. They would throw a feast in your honor, give you a chance to say some last word. Then you'd be taken to a chamber where the air would go stale, you'd get dizzy, and you'd pass out. And that would be it. Thinking about your life as a teenager just after the capsize, a pile of skin and ribs, you would never have expected yourself to die such a dignified end. It was just one last chance for the Foundation to show its gratitude for your years of service.
He keeps going, I don't have any mana, I don't have any mana. You don't need mana. I'm not trying to fucking get next
No more
to.
famines like those early winters. And you were one of
trying
those
to
heroes
fucking-
that braved the blue to get your settlement more food. You were a farmer, a cloud toucher, and you were damn proud of it. You'd earned that retirement. There was just one thing, one final wish you held. You wanted to see the sun rise again. It was late at night that you snuck from your quarters. Nobody lived with you. Your spouse had turned 65 2 years ago, and your daughter lived on the other side of the settlement with her husband. At an hour like this, nobody was awake. You walked through the stone hallways, reaching the door labeled counterweights. The door was locked, but your key still worked. The security for the counterweights was light. Most people were barely even able to put it down, much less walk above it. A counterweight was a large metal frame with a tank on the bottom of it and wheels on the top.
I was still too busy trying to get all my items.
Keeping their center of gravity firmly above the tank, allowing them to stand upright the entire time. It allowed people to walk on the surface without giving a head rest. To move in the counterweight, one would strap their feet to the pedals at the bottom, which would allow them to walk to move the frame above them, as they steered by pulling levers with their hands. The tank would be filled with water, which, combined with the weight of the metal counterweight, would keep the person weighed against the ground above them, allowing them to walk on the surface above the blue. The counterweight you strapped yourself to was your old counterweight, from before you retired. It was in the back, dusty from disuse. Cloud touchers didn't use another's counterweight. That was basic manners, and it seemed that no one had claimed yours yet. As you filled your tank with water, you felt the weight of the tank pull you up against the ceiling, once it had caused the counterweight to weigh more than you. To be safe, you let the tank fill 50 pounds extra. Your counterweight holding you against the ceiling, you walked out of the room, through the hallway, and out of the settlement's entrance. The night sky was below, a yawning black abyss with twinkling
Soren
stars at the
Spirit
bottom.
is not
There was a
understanding
bit
what's
of
going
light
on.
the horizon, where the sun would come, but it
He's
hadn't
really
yet
not,
set
but
too
whatever.
low.
As long as I win, he can go fucking eat a dick.
That the word
This
to
is a
describe
good
the start of the
opportunity
day
to
was
learn.
still sunrise.
He's a fucking one.
even after the
Yeah, he
capsize.
still doesn't even see that I'm
There was
giving
some
him
quirk of
mana.
language, you supposed.
He's just kind of
Old
like
habits.
walking around like a dimwit,
You had a bit of time until the sun
breaking the
came, so
tether.
you decided to take a short walk through the fields.
Uh,
It was a warm summer night. The crops were well grown, but it was not quite time to harvest. Still,
it's crazy.
back
This
up
whole
here
story's
brought you
about
back.
losing
All those
gravity
years spent working to grow
and
food.
everyone living
Was there
underground.
any life better lived than one lived in service? The early winters had been a nightmare. You did not think of them much anymore, but you remembered the hunger. Too many mouths to feed, that was the problem. Too many people not pulling their weight. While you certainly had pulled yours, you put yourself at risk every day, braving the blue, all to make sure everyone had enough to eat. Something felt strange about your counterweight. It was too easy to move yourself. There was a particular amount of resistance the pedals should have pushed against you, and it was far too weak. You froze. Above you, you heard the faint sound of trickling. Anxiously, you reached your hand behind you and felt a thin stream of water. Your tank, your old, untouched for years tank, was leaking. There was only so much weight keeping you from falling into the blue, and it was decreasing every second. In a rush, you tried to pedal back to the settlement. It had been a mistake to come out here. Nobody would know you were here. Nobody would come to save you before you fell. With a sense of dread, you felt your counterweight slowly fall away from the soil below. In a quick and desperate move, you grabbed onto some stalks of corn, trying to cling to the ground. For now, those stalks and the counterweight could support you. You at least had a moment to think, though you could feel it getting harder and harder to hold on. As you looked around for something to save you, you noticed that the sunrise had begun. The horizon was fire orange, and below it a faint blue was shining through the clouds. It was an odd moment of peace. Even the sound of the water slowly trickling above was almost relaxing, like rain on the pavement. Maybe this is how it's supposed to be, you thought to yourself. It was your death day after all. What death were you most suited for than the Cloud Touchers? You let go of the crops. As you watched the ground rise away, you slipped out of your counterweight and watched the metal fall and crash to earth. It would be a waste of resources to bring it to the blue with you. Besides, this way, they'd know for sure what happened to you. You didn't want them thinking you'd run. And you fell. We're then given a bit more info about Project Topside, although it's not particularly helpful. All individuals with significant anomalous knowledge, particularly those with a knowledge of thaumaturgy or anomalous mechanics, were to relocate to Settlement 2000, if possible, where they would determine a method to reverse the capsize. This was to be considered the Foundation's second highest priority, after the preservation of sapient life, and Settlement 2000 was to receive the resources necessary to achieve this goal. Once gravity was flipped back, SCP-2000 is to be used to return the world to the state it was in before. On July 10th, 2107, however, Settlement 2000 was destroyed in a cave-in, along with all information relevant to Project Topside. With a unanimous vote by the Directors' Council, Project Topside was moved to an indefinite hiatus. We are, however, given another individual experience that does shed some more light on Project Topside and what went wrong. It reads, 71 years. 71 years. When Project Topside was started, it was expected to take no more than 3 to 6 months, a couple years at the longest. Yet despite all of the resources available at Settlement 2000, it had taken 71 years to find the answer. Today, you received the news. A successful method of reversing SCP-8654
You all attacked a different
had been
person,
found.
which that's the
You
problem.
can finally right the world.
Storm jumped in on the fucking Jakiro, but yet the fucking stupid bird fucking attacked the fucking Rubik.
He was at the bottom of Settlement 2000, poking out of the surface. The floor was a large window, with a desk and chair bolted to the middle. It had been designed to remind the
This is so
director
dumb.
of the beauty of the surface world, something that was becoming more and more important to each generation. Most people alive today had never seen a tree or grass, but the stars in the night sky. You saw it every day. Though you understood the symbolism of it all, looking down here had always made you dizzy. There was just the blue beneath you. In your logical mind, you knew that the glass was more than strong enough to hold your weight. It would take a bomb to crack it. A silly, primal part of you still worried, but not for much longer. There was a signal you were supposed to broadcast, one to call an emergency meeting to the Directors' Council with the highest priority. You sat at your computer, sent the signal out, and allowed yourself to imagine how people would react. Surely in every settlement there would be a celebration like the one upstairs. You knew that Topside was controversial. Budget cuts were getting more and more common, and many regarded it as unlikely to ever be successful. But you, your team, you had proved them all wrong. You had found the way out. Eventually, you received a message request. Clicking on it excitedly, you saw the gaunt face of William Platt, director of Settlement 19. He had a grim look about him, as if he did not want to believe what he was hearing. Hello, Director L. Did you mean to send out that message? You've done it. Director Platt spoke in a deep, guttural voice, as if he had swallowed something and was trying to keep it down. Yes. Thank God, yes. We did it, Platt. We finally did it. Director Platt let out a loud, deep sigh. A contrite look passed across his face before he hardened into grim resolve. Something in your stomach dropped. Platt, you asked. Is something wrong? No, nothing is wrong, Platt said. I assume your people are throwing a party. Yes, you said cautiously. Is there something wrong with that? We've been spending over 7 decades on this. It makes sense. I'd suggest you go there. Be with them. Platt sounded like he felt sorry for you. But why would he? After years of failure, you had finally... Something in your brain clicked. It made a sick kind of sense. Why would they give up their power now? In shock, you tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Director Platt sat silent. He looked at you, shame behind his eyes. I'm sorry, Director. Goodbye, he said. The message closed. You stood up, pressing your face into your palm. This situation remains across the glass, an old habit of yours, when you heard a loud click, followed by a bang. You were knocked to the floor by the force of the explosion, but were otherwise uninjured. Your desk, on the other hand, was completely destroyed. If you had stayed in your seat, that didn't matter.
So you guys didn't kill anybody. Wow.
You had to get to another computer and tell someone about this. Someone out there would want to end this nightmare. As you started to push your body up, you heard a faint clinking sound.
Definitely jumped the fuck out of me.
Spider webs crawled out from between your fingertips and palms. The glass was cracking. The explosion must have damaged it. One unlucky shift of weight, or even any movement too strong, and you would fall. Through the glass, there were the treetops stretching away. Then the blue. It was a clear day today, not a cloud in sight. You had to get off of this glass. Carefully, you reached out your
I like
hand.
how the fucking the heel balls
Maybe you could
that
fall.
far
Like
away.
you put pressure on your knees to propel your hips forward. You heard the glass crack behind you. The cracks were spreading your body weight, and most of it was in your knee. But maybe if you could be careful, deliberate, you could avoid shattering the floor. Here we go. At a glacial pace, you lifted one of your legs into the air and pulled your body forward one step. The glass cracked loudly and quickly as you did so, but did not shatter. Yes. You began repeating this process with your other leg. This time, as you pulled yourself forward, you heard a loud tink and saw a much larger crack stretch out from beneath you. Shit. The floor shattered. And you fell. So yeah, it sure seems like the new regime didn't actually want gravity to be flipped back, as things would go back to the way they were before, when the Directors' Council didn't exist. We are then provided a note
Like there,
written by
I
the
literally
previous Director of Settlement
I literally
19
killed
for
the
her successor.
killed the tombstone, and then I fucking jumped on top of the fucking
It reads,
damage dealer,
"Hello,
healed her
my
to
successor.
full, and then she killed everyone
It is
else.
with a heavy heart that I write this message to you. With this, I fully give up hope on going back to the world I once knew. The Foundation before the capsize was an evil organization. I was a young woman then, but even I could recognize that. We all told ourselves that it was worth it, that it was hard decisions that we had to make to save the world. I wanted to. I did. know some old fogey like me has told you about the world before, but I hope you'll forgive a dying woman her reminiscing. You could
Ridiculous.
stand beneath the sky on a sunny day and just feel the warmth on your face. One day I was out walking, and all of a sudden it began to pour rain. By the time I got inside, my clothes were soaked through, and I was shivering. When I was a child, I used to love snowy days in winter, making snow angels and snowmen and snowballs and whatever you wanted. On warmer nights, you could lie down on the grass at night and stare up at the stars. God, I miss the stars. But those days are over. I long for them, but they are in the past.
Bounty Hunter doesn't do anything
When the
anymore.
capsize happened, it made sense that we would try to reverse it. If we had found the secret within a year, maybe 2, we could have fired up SCP-2000, amnesticized everyone, and gone back to normal just like that. But we didn't. Instead, the years passed, and we had to learn to live in this new world, to fear the blue and dig our tunnels. When I became a member of the Director's Council, I was a hopeless dreamer, imagining the world of my youth as the mold for what the world ought to be. In my career, I have learned how naive I truly was. To my successor, I tell you this: Topside cannot be allowed to succeed. Consider what recreating humanity before the capsize would mean. SCP-2000 would recreate only the human population of the time. What about everyone born since then? Given the volume of the population, the Foundation would have only one practical option, one that I know they would take. I will not see generations of children die because they were born after the capsize. But we can't just stop Topside entirely. It must die a quiet, dignified death. Let it bleed out after everyone who can remember a sky above them is dead. Stopping it then might be unpopular, but peace will prevail this time. If, by some cruel miracle, Project Topside succeeds before we can stop it, you must take immediate action. Director Ellis will send you a message when it succeeds. When you receive it, activate the bomb hidden in Ellis's desk. Then destroy Settlement 2000 with the nuclear warhead at Settlement 41. Their director knows about this plan and will cover it up. I know that you might think that a plan like that betrays the Foundation. It does not. The Foundation likes to say that its purpose is to keep the world safe, but the truth is that it exists to enforce normalcy. All that I am doing is prioritizing the normalcy of today over the normalcy of 70 years ago. I will not see another capsize happen. We barely survived it once. Good luck. Amelia Barlow, Director of Settlement. Lastly, one more short experience and the wind wailed around your ears.
They're
And your
literally
body
diving.
spun as your limbs flailed, and your speed increased, and the air thinned,
Your top
and you
tower
might
is
have
under
blacked
attack.
out, and the ground drew so far away.
Just go.
I mean, I don't know why you jump in on 5 people.
Burned brightly, and your flesh melted and bubbled and charred, and then suddenly it became so very cold, and what remained fell forever.
This Juggernaut sucks.
Apocalyptic SCPs often differ largely in the nature of the Foundation's presence after the end of civilization. Sometimes they are completely absent, and sometimes they are responsible for fixing the apocalypse, and other times they use their best to help out the people that still trudge on. Here, the Foundation definitely adapted as best as they could in the wake of the capsize, shifting everyone underground and keeping them fed, but they certainly became more and more authoritarian as time went on. The decision to prevent the reversal of gravity is definitely questionable, as it's understandable not to want to kill off 70 million people, but at a certain point you have to make the best choice for the future of the species. I'm sure that this version of humanity could continue to grow and expand, building more and more tunnels and underground settlements. But you'd think that enough people would start to question why gravity affects objects differently than animals that they would want to look more into. Regardless, it's an interesting enough article.
And of course, he's got double ulti.
Nothingness is definitely a worrisome.
The double ulti is always fantastic.
Ground doesn't sound that swell.
Bro, our team is brain dead. Picking bounty hunter was such a dumb idea. It's crazy. You can't do shit in late game. You can't do shit. And for him picking that, it's just a greedy pick. It's a fucking gimmick. It's literally a fucking gimmick.
SCP-7.
Oh, word. Let's listen to
Khorne, the Lord of Rage.
the Lord of Rage.
And central concept of the Warhammer 40k universe is, of course, war. It permeates every aspect of every facet and it's been that way for millennia. When you have chaos gods, then, that feed on various emotions and aspects of mortal life, a god that feeds on warfare would certainly be quite potent indeed. That brings us to Khorne, a simple and direct chaos god that relishes all things to do with warfare, violence, conflict, and has been feeding on these actions since the dawn of humanity. Let's take a brief look at Khorne, his domain in the war. Khorne is the chaos god of rage, violence, hatred, warfare, murder, and bloodshed. And it's this last aspect that is the most important. Khorne's primary concern is the spilling of blood, whether it be combatants or innocents, allies,
You need
or
Phantom Blades.
It doesn't really matter to him how the blood flows, just that it does. So much so that the common battle cry of his followers is
Blood for the Blood God.
Blood for the Blood God.
Skull for the Skull
for the
Thrones.
Skull Throne. Although some claim that Khorne is a god that respects honor and martial superiority, this has generally been proven false, and these concepts are only utilized by certain Khornate followers to justify their killings. Khorne doesn't care if his followers exhibit any sense of honor in their violence, just as long as they do it, regularly and perpetually. Rage and anger are, of course, important aspects as well, as self-sacrificial bloodshed isn't quite the same as blood spilt on a battlefield, caused by an enraged warrior looking to slaughter everything in their path. Obviously, there have been conflicts born from hatred and rage since the dawn of man, so it's no surprise that Khorne is said to have been the first of the Chaos Gods to manifest. While none of the Chaos Gods get along with one another, Khorne bears a special hatred for Slaanesh, although the reasons for this are not as clear-cut as the differences between Nurgle and Tzeentch. Slaanesh, devoted to pleasure and obsessions, turns combat into an art form, taking pleasure in watching talented combatants fight one another, where the act of spilling blood is secondary to the beauty of the movements and actions involved. Khorne views this as offensive and degenerate, as combat should always be about bloodshed, not pleasure. Khorne, of course, also doesn't care much for Tzeentch and his followers, viewing them as cowardly sorcerers unwilling to engage in direct physical combat. While Tzeentch might potentially be the most powerful of the Chaos Gods due to knowing what the future holds, and Nurgle has the most followers across the galaxy, Khorne is certainly the most potent and active of the four. Every conflict, big or small, and every act of violence feeds Khorne in some way. And with grand
Roshan
battles
has fallen to the
routinely
radio.
occurring involving millions upon millions of deaths, his rage and power only continues to grow. He doesn't need to weave any complicated schemes or promise mortals immense power and prestige, as all he needs is for the galaxy to continue as it has for many millennia. That's not to suggest that he's not involved in all of these conflicts, however, as Khorne's presence is felt in all of them, from an angry dispute between two civilians to the orbital bombardment of an entire planet. Khorne fans the flames of discord, anger, and violence, encouraging mortals to slip over the edge into wanton mayhem. An argument that suddenly turns violent might very well be due to Khorne's influence, as this perfectly feeds his thirst for blood. Before long, he may just gain a new follower that shares that thirst. Khorne's appearance is generally consistent, appearing as a massive, muscular humanoid standing hundreds of feet tall, coated in heavy, overlapping plates of armor. That of a twisted, savage, snarling dog, and his every word growls of fury. He generally resides on a brass throne, which sits atop a mountain of stone. The stones are from both his champions as well as his enemies, consisting of 100,000 different species. Battles with one another. This perpetual infighting only pauses if any foolhardy invaders seek to wage a doomed war against the Lord of Blood, before the demons will return to slaughtering one another over and over again for Khorne's amusement. The realm itself is also...
I'm doing like everything I can.
Storms rage across crimson skies.
They all like break my tether.
Of wind across the plains and mountains.
And then I have to like,
Tearing into the
once
land.
they break the tether, then I have to wait a certain amount of time to be able to tether back to them.
Earthquakes.
By the time that happens, they're fucking
Great
dead.
gouts of molten brass into the sky, burning up the storm cloud, and new mountains erupt out of the flat ground to block the storm's advances. The terrain is also interrupted by great rivers of boiling blood crisscrossing across the landscape, dividing it into territories which the demons fight over, and new rivers of blood will pop up spontaneously, splitting the lands in new ways to encourage new warfare. The earth retaliates against this as well, as earthquakes push the rivers closed again, and volcanoes spew molten brass into them to seal them shut. It is a realm of perpetual violence of all aspects, and any visitor to the realm would surely be driven mad, knowing that everything here, from the blood god to the demons,
Enemy's
even the
mid
rocks
tower
and wind,
down.
is
Another
looking to kill them.
bulwark falls.
To witness the carnage here is to know that conflict is a living, breathing thing. At the edge of Khorne's domain is a ring of volcanoes reaching hundreds of kilometers into the air, belching black smoke and molten brass, creating a border that can't be seen nor navigated through. Anyone attempting to cross into Khorne's realm will be met by toxic ash, scorching brass, blood storms, and jagged rock. Demons of stone and liquid metal also form here, born of rage and defiance, bludgeoning and scorching any would-be invaders with mindless fury and pure violence before falling back into lifeless piles. At the base of the volcanoes are the demon forges, where countless weapons of war of all types are crafted to supply the eternal war, along with components of blood gods and demons. The anvils here contain the enslaved souls of any mortals who dare attempt to invade Khorne's realm, with tormented screams mingling with the sound of the wind. The thousands of blood cutting across the realm all dump out plunging down into the massive red waterfall, forming the lake of water, larger than any ocean in the whole realm. Leviathans of brass and bone swim throughout this lake, devouring everything they come across. Demons fly above the lake, doing battle with dragons made of pure solid blood. The lake itself is animate, snatching anything it can out of the sky that comes too close, and its waves take the shape of battling warriors with crashing violence. On the far shore of this lake rests evil megas, so numerous that the ground has never received. This field stretches into the distance for kilometers before reaching a great black wall, the outer perimeter of the brass citadel.
They're trying
On
to
top
break
of the
your middle
walls,
tower.
inside of them, above them, are loyal demons dedicated to protecting the citadel from any would-be intruder. Although it's rare that any force can muster the strength to approach the citadel, let alone breach its walls. Although this
That's
is
ridiculous.
a
That's ridiculous. These dudes are like literally fucking throwing the game away. But they've done that for like the past like 20 minutes, honestly. It is what it is, but like that was a disaster of a game, and we gotta let it happen. They're gonna let it happen, and they're gonna not rotate when we're in trouble. Then whatever, whatever.
Calling himself the Demon Killer, had
The-
once led his war band straight into the Eye of Terror in search of carnage, utilizing a large number of orc weird boys to bypass the Imperial defenses around Cadia. Tuska soon encountered several demon worlds belonging to some of the other Chaos gods, conquering them easily and proving to be quite unstoppable. This changed when they landed on a planet belonging to a demon prince of Khorne, leading to the slaughter of Tuska and his entire warband. Khorne, however, enjoyed Tuska and his murderous carnage so much that he ensured that the orcs rose again the following day, allowing them to repeat their crusade. They were slaughtered again, and so Khorne continued to bring them back over and over, with the orcs never relenting in their bloodlust. Eventually, Khorne was so impressed that he brought them all into his domain, allowing them to fight his elite generals every day for eternity. All of Khorne's followers share this trait of wanton violence and carnage for carnage's sake, from his mortal followers up to his greatest demonic servants. Khorne's temple is the battlefield, and all one has to do to worship him is kill, maim, and burn every day for as long as they exist. Following Khorne is the easiest path to raw physical power, and it's alluring to anyone across the galaxy that wishes for more strength to crush their enemies and see them driven before them. Khorne ends up influencing many of the primitive worlds across the Imperium, where warring tribes are always looking for a way to best their opponents in straight combat. Sorcery and other trickery are frowned upon, so most of Khorne's mortal followers are little more than mindless berserkers looking to make as much blood flow as possible. That's all that really needs to be done to worship and glorify Khorne, so any day spent not spilling blood is blasphemous, leading many bands of Khorne followers to battle one another in the meantime. Those that manage to gain Khorne's favor will be blessed, gaining physical mutations in the form of increased strength or grotesque alterations, such as horns or talons. Long-term Khornates that continue to do battle in Khorne's name will eventually become little more than mindless beasts, slaughtering everything in their path. Khorne's demonic servants are quite similar, eschewing tactics and strategy in battle for raw ferocity and martial prowess. His primary rank and file demons are called bloodletters, appearing as red-skinned humanoids with large horns and serpentine tongues. Sporting rippling muscles and razor-sharp claws, they don't even need any weapons to slice through armor and kill anything inside of it, but they also generally carry large warp metal swords called Hellblades, capable of cutting through just about any armor forged by a mortal. Despite being the most common soldiers in Khorne's blood legions, they are amongst the most aggressive entities of the warp, and in battle they'll easily enter a horrific frenzy, cutting down everything before them as they try to outdo one another in savagery.
They look crazy as shit.
Are blood crushers, which are bloodletters riding on the backs of demonic
Oh, look at Blood Crusher.
juggernauts.
That shit looks
Juggernauts
crazy.
are a fusion of flesh and machine, an unstoppable force of brass, iron, fire, and blood. Only the most favored of the bloodletters are allowed the privilege of trying to tame one, and if they manage to mount one and survive its thrashing movements, it will be perhaps the most lethal of all war mounts. Other beasts used by the Blood Legion are flesh hounds, vaguely canine creatures used for hunting across great distances, even across space. Their howls of rage are said to chill the heart and haunt a person's nightmares, driving a target to madness before the hound catches up to them to sink their razor-sharp teeth in. Few can outrun or hide from a flesh hound on the hunt, and a pack of these is certainly a fearsome threat. The strongest and most brutal of the bloodletters will be taken to the Brass Citadel, to a vast arena known as the Skull Pit, in order to separate the best of them from the rest. The energies of the fallen will then be granted to those remaining, swelling them with power and transforming their Hellblade into a blade of blood. These demons, now known as Heralds of Khorne, will lead the demonic armies underneath them into battle. The greater demons of Khorne are known as bloodthirsters, and these creatures are truly masters of battle in every sense of the concept. They are the very essence of brutality and savagery, and are renowned as the greatest warriors among demonkind, with only the boldest and most heroic of mortals even standing the slimmest chances of survival against them. Most of them stand nearly 10 meters tall, with the largest being the size of a scout titan, their bodies impossibly muscled. From their backs sprout a pair of gigantic bat-like wings, allowing them to fly across a battlefield, and their faces are similar to that of Khorne himself, bestial and snarly. They generally carry a pair of weapons, a massive demonic battle axe, the blade of which is at least as tall as a space marine, and a long barbed whip capable of delivering death at range to even the most agile of their foes.
Yeah,
The
Khorne's
axes
people
are
look
capable
crazy.
of cleaving an armored battle tank in two.
They just
Rather
don't
than
fucking
just destroying
think.
a target's physical body, they will consume their souls as well. Bloodthirsters lead the great legions into battle, but rather than utilizing advanced tactics and strategy, they lead with stunning brutality. Of course, select mortals that prove themselves to the blood god time and time again can be elevated to a select position, becoming demon princes of Khorne. These monstrous mortals are imbued with incredible physical power, and as long as they continue to provide a constant flow of blood for Khorne, they will remain in his favor. Finally, there is Khorne's greatest servant, the demon Primarch Angron. Angron was known for his brutality and savagery even before falling to chaos, but Khorne has empowered him, transforming him into a demonic monster capable of battling dozens and dozens of space marines at once. He stands amongst the greatest threats of chaos known to the galaxy, and even if he is bested, he will always return from the warp unscathed and ready for more war. While the other Chaos Gods may have some interesting philosophies related to their existences, Khorne is rather blunt and simple. Rather than being interested in the specific hows and whys of conflict,
5
Khorne
seconds
is only
remaining.
interested in the conflict itself, which is in itself an interesting commentary on the universe of 40K. The universe cannot exist without war,
It's
and
your
so it
turn to
must
pick.
perpetuate, for one reason or another, and that will simply continue to feed Khorne. There are always going to be individuals out there, human or otherwise, with an interest in growing more powerful in order to defeat their enemies, and thus turning to Khorne is a simple yet effective way to obtain that power. Whether or not Khorne is the most interesting of the Chaos Gods is certainly up for debate, but you can't deny the results, as millions of fanatics across the galaxy scream and rage on a battlefield in their thirst for blood for the Blood God.
Blood for the Blood God. Skulls for the Skull Throne.
SCP-7933. X is for crossing. Creativity and artistic expression is a core concept of humanity, with storytelling and artwork existing for tens of thousands of years. Being able to express ourselves through different mediums is arguably an essential part of our existence, and one of the major things that separates us from lower animals. SCP-7933 presents a scenario in which that concept of expression is gravely threatened, in a highly unlikely and unusual way. We might be able to exist without being able to freely express ourselves, but it's doubtful that we would want
Great,
to.
they're back.
Let's take a look.
Feel the
The
chill.
article starts with a notice that due to the ongoing artistic singularity event brought about by SCP-7933,
Prepare
this
for
article
battle.
has been screened for potential narrative qualities.
Into
The
the
threat
breach.
of 7933 contamination has been determined to be 23%. The
This,
containment
my
procedures
friends,
mention
is
that following
in
the
the bag.
threshold
It's
containment
in the
ratio being
bag.
met on January 29th, 2025, 7933 is no longer containable, and it's currently believed that the resulting
Swiftly.
artistic singularity event will achieve planet-wide assimilation by December of 2030.
On.
As such, containment efforts have been refocused into contingencies
I move.
Deucalion and Pura. Deucalion involves acquiring as many vulnerable
Indeed.
instances of
This
human
battle
artistic culture as
is in a
permitted
body
by the
bag.
maximum payload of the SCPS Deucalion,
30
an
seconds to
experimental
battle.
multiversal exploration vehicle that will eventually be
It's
sent
not time
unmanned
yet.
to the nearest neighboring parallel universe. If the onboard sensors detect even minimal 7933 contamination aboard the Deucalion, the onboard nuclear warhead will
I'm not
detonate,
ready.
and no further action will be taken towards preservation. Pura, on
I
the other
thought as
hand,
much.
involves the inurement of humankind to the effects of 7933,
Agreed. Let's get
primarily
moving.
through amnestics.
It's all fun and
SCP-7933 is
games
a
until
self-replicating
someone's frozen
narrative
solid.
contagion of unknown origin.
I'll not argue.
Upon initial discovery in 2023, it was believed that it only affected VHS tapes, but testing showed that it affected any form of data storage that contains
Yes.
a story with a beginning, middle, and end, including books, audio
Let's go.
files, and live performers. When an infected instance comes within 100
Fangs
meters
of
of an
ice.
unaffected story, the content of the story changes significantly to involve the characters being
Forward.
slaughtered by hundreds of angry mandrills, a species of monkeys.
Swiftly.
Testing on a live-action VHS film, at a random point in the story, mandrills suddenly charge into the scene and begin to eat and dismember the cast. None of the affected characters make any attempt to defend themselves and only minimally struggle. In rare instances, victimized characters will look at the camera and say, "It was only a question of when," or "This is what we deserve for not being monkeys." In an animated film, at a random point, the screen will suddenly freeze, and the camera will pan away to reveal an animation studio that is currently under attack by vicious mandrills.
I move.
During a recording of a song, assuming the song has or implies a
Here I
narrative,
come.
the song will be randomly interrupted by the sound of a mandrill attack.
I thought as much.
In books, both fictional and non-fictional, the book will be divided into
Let's
2
go.
chapters, with the first comprising 1/3 of the original text and titled
Agreed.
"The Part Before the Monkeys Came." The second chapter,
Faster.
titled "The Part with All the Monkeys," briefly describes a mandrill attack
On.
in which the entire population of Earth is murdered and replaced by mandrills,
Faster.
with the remainder of the pages blank. Testing on live news reports,
I
SCP
move.
documentation, and websites requires level 5 clearance to see. And
Forward.
paintings, visual art, and photographs determined that the image will transform into an
Let's
identical
go.
image of several mandrills walking across a desert from left to right.
I'll not argue.
Finally, research is ongoing on thoughts kept to
Here I
oneself.
come.
If any of the affected video instances are played from the beginning, a 10-minute film plays with the title card reading
Attack.
Monkey Crossing. And during the
Your
film,
bottom tower is under attack.
4,920
Swiftly.
mandrills walk from the left side of the screen to the right. The backdrop varies, but will usually resemble either a desert or a scene from the film prior to 7933 contamination.
I thought as much.
Revisited audio files will be silent, save for the sound of several hundred mandrills breathing. On May 5th, 2024, during the initial waves of the 7933 narrative pandemic, a performance of Rigoletto at the Lyric
Yes.
Opera of Chicago.
I don't have the
was
mana
suddenly
for that,
interrupted during
bro.
the first act by new material,
To battle.
sung without orchestral accompaniment. Although the libretto
Into
and
the
sheet
breach.
music used by the cast had also been affected, the cast had not rehearsed this before. It's noted that no real mandrills appeared during the performance,
Here I come.
and every physical reaction of mandrill attacks was pantomime.
My eyes spikes.
During the scene, Rigoletto suddenly enters in a state of dishevelment, exclaiming,
Swiftly.
"God help us all, they are upon us, the monkeys."
I'll not
The
argue.
Duke states to have mercy on his poor jester, for he has gone mad, as
Yes.
there are no monkeys in his court, and the other characters laugh it off. Then
Indeed.
Rigoletto exclaims for them to behold, at which point the other characters
Forward.
see the monkeys, and the chorus remarks, "What horror." The Duke then states, "They leap upon my throat with rapid stride. See how the blood gushes from my neck
Agreed.
like a fountain. Oh, I am dying. Dying
I
feels
move.
worse than sleeping with my courtiers' wives. But alas, that is what I am doing. What cruelty! I am very dead." The chorus continues to explain the
This'll
word
come in handy.
monkeys, as other characters
To battle.
flatly state how they are dying and having their arms torn off
You
by
really
monkeys.
should look at your bottom tower.
All of
Into
the
the breach.
characters promptly die,
I guess
and
Radiant
the curtains
fortified their
close.
structures.
Following the performance,
The
the
ice
entire
was
cast had fallen into comas, with only one actress being responsive to rescue efforts, claiming that she cannot move
Down
for the
you
monkeys
go.
have torn out
Under
her
attack.
heart. We're then provided a
I
note
thought as
from the
much.
Foundation administrator stating that the drop in morale ever since the
Let's
threshold
go.
meeting hasn't gone unnoticed, and he doubts an extension of his sympathy is going to fix anything. But even those among them that laughed off 7933 as that
I'll freeze you
silly
fast.
monkey thing have begun to feel the misery of the contagion's impact. They
Faster.
can survive without stories and art, but there's a difference between surviving
Agreed.
and living. He says to make no mistake,
Nine.
though, as the resilience of the human
Into the
mind has
breach.
taken us this far, and that's why he's announcing a third contingency,
Swiftly.
Prometheus. Through this, the brightest minds of the Foundation will work together to create a new and untouchable form of human expression. His note is interrupted, however, as he writes that he hears broken glass and an ungodly howling noise. He then writes that the mandrills are climbing all over him and biting into his neck. He tells the monkeys to stop and to go away, before writing that he is now dead and the monkeys win. There are now 100 times 100 monkeys walking across his corpse in a big line to the east. They're going off to do their monkey jobs, and it's a good thing that they're so much better and stronger than him. He wishes them good luck with their monkey jobs, not that they'll need it, and that he loves them. Finally, he thanks them for destroying them. The administrator then posts a follow-up note, simply reading that 7933 is surviving, and that in itself is hopeful. You'll understand if he's not in the mood to write out the whole thing all over again, as keeping it shorter seems to help, for now at least. He wishes everyone good luck, as they'll need it. The final text of the article states, "But all the same, it's no fault of ours either. Perhaps our tribes are just that incompatible. And so it is with a heavy heart that I must inform you that this document and everything within has been eaten by monkeys. So consider this my final, desperate plea for you to take the hint and get out of the way. Eastward bound, and off we go."
Indeed.
So yeah, obviously a pretty humorous concept to read about, but would actually be pretty bad if it were to happen. There's nothing really stopping anyone from writing or creating new things. It's just that they would all end up being effectively ruined by a lame conclusion. The real issue is, of course, the implication that it affects your own thoughts as well. Quite frankly, would likely lead to widespread insanity and let it go on for long enough. Perhaps the Foundation can somehow find a way to do this through mass anesthetization and purging of affected works, but maybe the best way is to wipe everything clean and start fresh from SCP-2000. Unless, of course, that gets infected as well. Perhaps some works would indeed be improved by the presence of a bunch of angry mandrills killing off all the characters, but it probably wouldn't be worth it to lose all artistic expression.
Antiseptic shock.
I mean, just gonna watch me get fucking killed.
Your middle tower is under attack. I don't think you want that to happen. Let's go.
So it meets you now too. scary.
The enemies with a talent to be needed. structures are fortified. Radiant structures are fortified. Yes.
My fates were woven from the first.
Indeed. To battle. Ice, take you. Forward. Into the breach. I move. Fang slice. Yes. Agreed. Here I come. Swiftly. Let's go. I'll not argue.
I'm fucking Crystal Maiden. I'm not doing that without the fucking carries getting there.
I'm burning up.
Golden thread.
Just what I've been waiting for.
Nothing like positions down. On goes. I thought as much. Indeed. Forward. Indeed. The ice wolves bite. Your bottom tower is under attack. Yes. Under attack. Mine. I thought of that.
Killing spree. Sport.
You're not done with me yet.
What is the Huskar have a fucking Shadow Blade?
Killing spree. Killing spree. Double kill. Your life's in danger. I'm in your debt.
Proc. Proc one of the creeps.
The enemy's middle tower has fallen. Let's talk about your You only live ice. Let's go. I move. Agreed. Here I come. I'll not argue. Into the breach. Attack. Down.
Clear as clean water.
To battle.
I'll take that.
Here's icing the ride. Here I come. On. Let's go. Forward. I'll freeze you fast. Force staff. I move. Agreed. Not yet. Faster. I thought as much. I'm under attack. Die. Into the breach. I'll not. Crossfire takes.
Double kill!
You move like Look at that. Radiant's courier just got killed. Dire Snow fortified their structures. Yes. Your top tower is under attack. We all talk. Let's go. I'll not argue. Swiftly.
A golden thread.
Your middle tower is under attack. I guess Radiant fortified their structures. Your middle tower is under attack. I didn't see that. Into the breach.
Haste!
I thought as much. I move. Yes. I'm under attack. Ah. The ice will. Down you go. The enemy's got a tower. The enemy's bottom barracks have fallen. The enemy's bottom Here I come.
Kill!
Agreed. Let's go. Dire have fortified their structures. Yes.
Unstoppable! Ownage!
Faster! The enemy's middle barracks are no more! The enemy's middle barracks have fallen. Agreed. Cold in here, or is it just me? The enemy's top tower has fallen swiftly. I'll freeze you fast. There go the enemy's top barracks. Enemy's top barracks drop like some sectors now have mega creeps. Here I come. Here's icy. The enemy's middle tower won't be making any more appearances. I know. Ah, I'm under attack. Radiant victory.
12, 7, and 21. Oh, Chris Maiden is pretty good. I didn't think she was that good. Wow, I got MVP too. That's nice. Got more kills than a safe lane. This Husker was a piece of shit to me though. That guy can kiss my ass. Alright, well I'm done. We played until like 4 o'clock in the morning, so actually 5. It's about to be 5. So today, I don't know, we're gonna be doing stuff. Definitely stay tuned. Don't forget to hit that like button, that follow button. See you soon. Bye.